Chapter 492. Screech, a blood-curdling shriek was heard. The huge body of the flying beast was like a bird with broken wings as it was sent flying. It landed heavily on a pile of boulders dozens of feet away, shattering many of the boulders into rubble and dust. Roar! A brute demon beast quietly appeared not far away. It wasn't very big, only about 5 feet tall. It had a humanoid form, but its head was like a wolf or an ape. Its entire body was covered in black scales, as if it was forged from black iron. It emitted a faint and deep light. When such a brute demon beast appeared, it emitted a mountain-like aura. Its aura was astonishing and its roar was like thunder. It directly charged out, and its humanoid palm-like claws grabbed towards Su-Yi. Su-Yi's gaze sank. This barbaric beast's aura wasn't weak. It's actually at the 5th level of the demon spirit realm. It's pretty powerful. Beast. Instead of advancing, Su-Yi retreated and punched out again. Simple and direct, it collided with the claw head-on. Boom. Roar! A muffled sound was heard, followed by a shriek. The barbaric beast spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Its sharp claws were dripping with blood as it smashed onto the ground, shattering the boulders and turning them into dust. Roar! In an instant, the roars of many barbaric beasts could be heard. Screech! Under the dusky dawn sky, a large number of ferocious beasts could be seen flapping their wings as they covered the sky. Not good, there are so many barbaric beasts. Situ Muyang was already awakened. He immediately leaped to Su-Yi's side. Be careful, we're in trouble. Su-Yi's gaze darkened. He had already sensed the arrival of many barbaric beasts, causing the forest to tremble and the ground to tremble. Roar! Soon, pairs of blood-red eyes appeared on the surrounding boulders. They were flickering with ominous glints as they let out deafening roars. In the sky, the ferocious beasts flapped their wings as they circled around, emitting a ferocious aura. The barbaric beasts had formed an army of barbaric beasts, surrounding the area tightly. Many of them had powerful auras. Gravel shot out from all directions and dust flew into the air. Waves of air swept past like a gale. A giant wolf raised its head and roared. Its entire body was snow-white, and its aura had reached the demon true realm. There was a ferocious bird that was only about 3 meters in size. Its feathers were as sharp as blades, and its claws were sharp. Its body was suffused with the aura of the demon true realm, and there were many ferocious birds around it. There were also plenty of demon spirit realm barbaric beasts in the air and on the ground. Their auras were ferocious, and their ferocious eyes were frightening. Why are there so many barbaric beasts? This is going to be troublesome. Situ Muyang's expression was grave as he sensed the aura of the barbaric beasts around them. He knew that they were in deep trouble. Gu, in the sky, the ferocious bird with blade-like feathers had a cold glint in its eyes. It flapped its wings and emitted a clanging sound. Rays of light shot out as it pounced towards Su-Yi and Situ Muyang. The aura of the demon true realm swept out, bringing about a storm. Oh! The snow-white giant wolf wasn't willing to be left behind. It unleashed a terrifying aura that shook the surrounding space as it pounced towards Su-Yi and Situ Muyang. Let's go all out and act according to the situation, Situ Muyang yelled as he activated the Imperial Wind battlesuit to defend himself. Su-Yi's expression changed. Without any hesitation, he circulated the Origin Supreme technique, and a destructive and majestic aura burst out. He unsheathed the saber on his back and executed the third move of the Mad Dragon Triblade, the Mad Dragon Overlord Slash. A ray of saber light shot out with a long trail of scarlet lightning. A scarlet aura swept out and covered the sky. Elo! There seemed to be a faint shadow of a scarlet dragon in the saber light, causing the surrounding ground to crack and explode. Huge rocks were turned into dust as a terrifying aura spread out. At this moment, the snow-white giant wolf seemed to have sensed an aura that it feared the most. Its ferocious eyes were filled with horror as its aura was greatly affected. Chi-La, when the saber light collided, the snow-white giant wolf and Su-Yi's saber collided as their sharp claws swept out. Su-Yi's body was pushed back, and so was the snow-white giant wolf. There were shallow scratches on its sharp claws, and its eyes were filled with shock. Deng deng! Su-Yi kept retreating as the blood and qi in his body churned. Blood and qi fluctuated in his throat with a hint of sweetness. Su-Yi forcefully swallowed a mouthful of blood as his expression turned grave. This snow-white giant wolf of the demon true realm was too powerful. Chi-La-La, at the same time, Situ Muyang and the ferocious bird had already collided. The wind howled and swept out in all directions. Puff! Situ Muyang fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Su-Yi stomped his foot on the ground as the Origin Supreme technique was fully activated, releasing a majestic and destructive aura. Aolo, at this moment, all the barbaric beasts in the air started to roar. Their roars shook the sky and they started to tremble. The two strongest snow-white giant wolf and the ferocious bird were also shocked. Their eyes were filled with fear as they stared at Su-Yi, not daring to move forward. Voila! At that moment, a ray of light came down from the sky, and a mysterious aura spread out. This aura seemed to be able to resist some of the barbarian beasts within a certain range. Now that Su-Yi was using the Origin Supreme technique, some of the barbarian beasts felt less suppressed. Su-Yi immediately sensed this aura and looked over. Above the sky, a ray of light spread out. Under Su-Yi's astonished gaze, a white elk that was half the height of a human slowly descended. It stood on a rock with an elegant figure. Its entire body was emitting a luster as the ray of light fluctuated. What a strange human! You're obviously human, but your aura seems to be closely related to the demon race. The elk opened its mouth and spoke in human language. Its voice was crisp, lively, and proud. Its eyes were shining with 5 colors. Demon illusionary realm. When the elk spoke in human language, Su-Yi and Situmuyang, who was struggling to get up, couldn't help but tremble. To speak in human language, this was a barbarian beast that had reached the demon illusionary realm. Su-Yi's expression turned serious. The Origin Supreme technique's aura didn't seem to be able to suppress a demon illusionary realm barbarian beast. There was actually a demon illusionary realm barbarian beast in the Myriad Sword battlefield. I know. This should be the guardian of the Myriad Sword battlefield. Situ Muyang whispered to Su-Yi. There's a guardian in the Myriad Sword battlefield? Su-Yi raised his eyebrows. No one had ever told him about this before. There was actually a guardian in the Myriad Sword battlefield, and it was even a demon illusionary realm barbarian beast. #W, I heard about it too. There aren't any experts from the Xinjian Gate in the Myriad Sword battlefield. However, this is an important place for the Xinjian Gate. Every Myriad Sword conference, the direct disciples would enter. In order to prevent any major accidents, the experts from the Xinjian Gate subdued barbarian beasts in the Myriad Sword battlefield to become the guardian of the Myriad Sword battlefield. As long as nothing major happens, the guardian won't interfere with the Myriad Sword battlefield. Chapter 493. Situ Muyang himself did not expect to meet the rumored guardian of the Myriad Sword battlefield, and it was even a demonic illusory realm savage beast expert. Su-Yi's eyes moved slightly. Although he was surprised, he did not find it strange. The Myriad Sword battlefield was very important, and there were no experts from the Xinjian Gate inside. Therefore, it was normal for an expert from the Xinjian Gate to subdue a savage beast expert and secretly protect it. How dare you destroy the mystical spirit tree, steal all the mystical spirit fruits, control the beast horde, and disrupt the Myriad Sword battlefield. You must be punished. The elk looked at Su-Yi and Situmuyang. It was agile and elegant, and its 5-colored eyes flashed. It seemed to be a little surprised that these two youths had such ability. Ever since it had guarded the Myriad Sword battlefield, Such a thing had never happened before. Senior, he is the son of the Xinjiang Gate's gate master. Sui frowned when he heard this. It went without saying that this elk was the guardian of the myriad sword battlefield. Since it was the guardian of the myriad sword battlefield, it should be under the command of the Xinjiang Gate. He hoped that Situ Muyang's identity would work. What son of the Xinjiang Gate's gate master? It has nothing to do with me. No matter who it was that disrupted the order of the myriad sword battlefield, they must be punished. The elk spoke, its light fluctuating. It completely ignored Sui and spoke in human language. You were the first to enter that mysterious place. You must have obtained some kind of opportunity, right? Sui focused. This elk did not seem to care about Situ Muyang's identity, and should have also entered the ancient forest. It even knew that he and Situ Muyang were the first to enter the ancient forest and obtained some kind of opportunity. What exactly do you want? This is the battlefield of myriad swords, and there are no rules to speak of. Even if we obtain some sort of opportunity or fortune, that's what we came here for. As the guardian of the battlefield of myriad swords, I'm afraid you can't interfere. Situ Muyang was panting with anger. This elk actually didn't put him in its eyes, which made him very unhappy. However, Situ Muyang was also wary. This elk was at the ethereal demon realm, and was not an ordinary beast. If they really fought, he would not be its opponent. I am the guardian of the myriad sword battlefield, so I naturally have my limits. Hand over all the mystical spirit fruits and the opportunities you obtained in the ancient forest. You have lost the right to participate in the myriad sword conference, and I will hand you over to the Xinjiang Gate. The elk spoke, its expression not change. Don't go overboard, Situ Muyang said angrily. No matter what, he would continue to walk to the end of the myriad sword conference. How dare you? The elk's not once words. Boom. The seemingly slender and agile elk burst forth with multicolored light at this moment. Its aura swept out and the multicolored light flooded the surroundings. It was incomparably powerful and imposing. Situ Muyang and Suyi's expressions changed at the same time. This elk was too powerful. The demon illusionary realm was indeed terrifying. His cultivation was much stronger than theirs. Sui and his people didn't have time to hesitate at all. Under the crushing pressure of the vast aura, it wasn't easy to avoid it. It had already enveloped the surroundings. Overlord Fist. In an instant, Sui went all out, no longer holding back the aura of a fifth-level origin spirit realm practitioner. Simultaneously, he struck out with his Overlord Fist. Gee! A ferocious bird's cry resounded. From beneath the sole of Situ Muyang's feet, the shadow of a huge black ping spread its wings and soared into the sky. Black light pervaded the air and illuminated the vast sky. Its cry pierced through the clouds and cracked the rocks. Tempest kick. At the same time, Situ Muyang's Windrider battle armor flapped its wings and soared into the sky. The gale on his body howled as a resplendent radiance rose like the sun. He stomped down. This stomp was powerful and swift. It caused the void to boil and a storm to sweep out, as if it wanted to shatter the void. Sui and Situ Muyang attacked with all their might. The destructive aura was incomparably ferocious. The convergence of light and storm was deafening, causing one's heart to tremble. The elk enveloped in multicolored light seemed to be moved when it sensed the aura. However, this elk was only moved. Its body swooped down and exploded with multicolored light. For no reason, the ground beneath it cracked open, and its aura was oppressive. The resplendent multicolored light rippled like waves, directly blocking the attacks of Sui and Situ Muyang. Sand and rocks flew everywhere. Huge rocks cracked, dust flew, and rocks were reduced to dust. The shadow of the dark nether ping was obliterated by the multicolored light. Situ Muyang's body was sent flying, blood spurting from his mouth. He was completely unable to resist. Puff! In the storm, Sui spat out blood and retreated. Su Yi's heart trembled. He knew best how terrifying this elk was. Just the aura of the impact alone was enough to make him unable to resist. While spitting out blood, Su Yi's back erupted with crimson light. He condensed a pair of Yuan Qi wings with the Fuyao 100 transformation step. His feet tapped the ground a few times and he flew backward. He soared into the sky and stabilized his momentum. A very special human. Very interesting. The multicolored eyes of the elk opened and closed. The light was resplendent, and there seemed to be a kind of shock in its eyes. It soared into the sky and pounced again. The surrounding void trembled. Wherever the elk passed, the multicolored light dyed the early morning sky. It was like a wave crushing towards Su Yi. Su Yi's expression was solemn. The crimson light in his eyes flickered. The wings condensed from the Fuyao 100 transformation steps shook, and the crimson light filled the air. He condensed a hand seal, and the light under his feet was extremely brilliant. Boom! Everything happened very quickly. The Yuan Qi covered his legs. At this moment, Su Yi's eyes flickered like lightning. It was dazzling, sharp, and terrifying. His temperament was like a god that had awakened. His robe fluttered, and his black hair fluttered behind him. It was as if there were mysterious and ancient patterns flowing on his feet. Unfamiliar runes gushed out, and a mighty aura swept across. Boom! He kicked out. The footprints were resplendent and as fast as lightning. In an instant, it was as if there were endless footprints. At this moment, Su Yi's aura was like the fury of thunder. It was powerful and terrifying. Awoo! This kind of aura made the surrounding barbaric beasts want to crawl even more. Their eyes were filled with horror. The footprints collided with the multicolored light. Suddenly, the resplendent light exploded like a small sun. Bang, bang, bang! The surrounding void rumbled. The space seemed to be secretly distorted. The magnificent energy surged, and the ground below collapsed. Rumble, the void trembled, and the boulders collapsed. The mountains also rumbled, and the earth cracked. Awoo! Such a terrifying aura made the souls of the barbaric beasts below tremble and roar endlessly. See latest chapter section, Part 1 Inch Puff. However, Su Yi's figure continued to flap his wings and flew in a straight line in the air. Blood poured out of his mouth, and the ground trembled. The ground was densely covered with cracks. Low in the sky, the elk's expression changed. The aura on that young man's body suppressed it. Only it knew how much the aura suppressed it. That young man was too mysterious. Chapter 494. At this moment, Su Yi's mouth was dripping with blood and his body was riddled with wounds. He looked miserable as he stared at the elk, stuffing the pill in his hand into his mouth with a solemn expression. The elk stared at him in astonishment. How could such a young man, who was only at the 5th level of Origin Spirit Realm, stand up? Although it was greatly affected by the attack just now, even an ordinary human at the 1st level of Origin Spirit Realm would find it hard to stand up. Are you alright? This guy is too hard to deal with. Situ Muyang was also riddled with wounds as he approached Su Yi. His condition was obviously worse than Su Yi's. Very troublesome. Su Yi smiled bitterly. He had indeed met his match this time. If we really can't do it, let's just hand over the mystical spiritual fruit and think of something else. Situ Muyang pondered. This barbaric beast was the guardian of the battlefield of myriad swords, which meant that it had to obey the orders of the Shunjian Gate. Situ Muyang could feel that this elk had yet to kill them. If they handed over the mystical spiritual fruit, they might be able to come up with something. QR update square root new plus. First post, hand over the mystical spiritual fruit and the fortune you obtained. Otherwise, I won't go easy on you. The elk opened its mouth again. Its colorful eyes were frightening, and its slender body was emitting a terrifying aura that was as oppressive as a mountain. What fortune? I don't know. You're just at the ethereal demon stage. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? At most, we'll both suffer. As Sui said this, he secretly took a deep breath. He unsheathed the broken sword from his back, and clenched it tightly in one hand. The last bit of Yuan Qi in his body surged as the Origin Supreme technique emitted a suppressive aura. His eyes were filled with a crimson glow. Sui knew what the mystical spiritual fruit was. Moreover, the mystical spiritual fruit had already been enhanced in the mysterious space. Handing over a treasure that had already fallen into his hands was never Su Yi's character. Even though demonic illusionary stage, savage demonic beasts were powerful, Su Yi had encountered them before. Back then in the barbaric demon forest, the elder of the Black Fiend sect was also at the Origin Void Realm. Su Yi had also defeated him, although it was with the help of the mysterious power within the broken sword. At this moment, Su Yi knew that he might not be able to unleash the power of the broken sword. However, if he were to really go all out, he might still be able to escape. After all, he still had the mysterious space on him that was specially made to deal with barbaric demonic beasts. This guy is too arrogant. Situ Muyang wanted to take a detour, but he didn't expect that Su Yi was still planning to fight the elk head-on. This was a demonic illusionary stage barbaric beast expert. To fight against a demonic illusionary stage expert with an essence spirit stage expert, this wasn't just arrogance, it was asking for a beating. Human young man, you're too arrogant. You might be a little extraordinary, but I'm afraid that your puny strength is far from enough. Hearing Su Yi's words, the radiant glow elk was very surprised. Its colorful eyes were fixed on Su Yi, emitting a terrifying light. You'll know once you try. I guarantee that you won't be able to gain much of an advantage. You'll pay the price. Su Yi gritted his teeth. Holding the broken sword in his hand, he waved his sleeve to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked straight at the radiant glow elk and said faintly, "There are many direct disciples of the Xinjiang Gate here, and some of them aren't weak either. I reckon that many of them must have been alerted by now. At worst, both of us will suffer. When those direct disciples see you, I'm afraid they won't let you off." "Are you threatening me?" The radiant glow elk was a little startled. It seemed that this human young man was actually threatening it. It said in a clear voice, "You want to cause both of us to suffer? Dream on. As for those direct disciples, do you think I'll care about them? What's more, as far as I know, all the disciples of the Xinjiang Gate are now looking for you." Su Yi's eyes moved inwardly. It seemed that this elk knew a lot of things. "If you don't believe me, you'll know once you try," Su Yi said. The Origin Supreme technique in his body was fully activated. A crimson light of vitality enveloped his body, and a majestic and destructive aura suddenly spread out. Looking at Su Yi, the radiant glow elk's colorful eyes rippled. It seemed to have felt some kind of aura, and its gaze quietly fluctuated. The aura of this human young man indeed made it afraid. It really didn't dare to be careless. Such a young man was too mysterious and special. For a moment, the elk couldn't grasp the situation in its heart. "Senior, why don't we make a deal?" Suddenly, Su Yi looked at the radiant glow elk and secretly rolled his eyes. "What kind of deal?" The radiant glow elk was secretly surprised. This was the first time it had met such a human young man. Since it had been guarding the battlefield of 10,000 swords, it had seen many outstanding young disciples of the Xinjiang Gate. However, this was the first time it had seen such a young man. "The mystical spiritual fruit is indeed on me. However, with Senior's strength, it's useless to have the mystical spiritual fruit. Why don't I give Senior a big gift and Senior will let us go?" Su Yi looked at the elk and said, "You're giving me a big gift? Could it be that you obtained it from that secret place?" Hearing this, the elk's eyes flashed brightly. "We have indeed entered that place. To be honest, we obtained a lot of spiritual herbs. As for other things, we didn't obtain anything. As for whether or not other people obtained any opportunities, I don't know. Senior should have already entered that place. You'll know once you go and check it out. Su Yi's expression didn't change. Naturally, he couldn't reveal that he had obtained the mythical bird's inheritance. That kind of opportunity was also a great temptation to savage beasts. This elk guarded the battlefield of 10,000 swords and obeyed the orders of the Shunjian Gate. Perhaps it also wanted to get a share of the opportunity. No one could be sure. The elk's eyes flickered as if it was thinking about something. It had been there before. Something shocking must have happened there, but it couldn't detect anything. Many disciples of the Shenzhen Gate had already entered, so it wasn't easy to investigate. Therefore, the elk didn't know whether Su Yi was telling the truth or not. Senior, take a look at this item first. If you're satisfied with it, we'll talk about it. Su Yi gritted his teeth and threw out a jade bottle. Chi, the elk raised its front hooves slightly and a ray of light spread out, wrapping the jade bottle in front of it. An invisible energy wave pulled out the cork. Suddenly, the elk's eyes changed greatly. It couldn't help but tremble and instantly close the cork. When the elk's colorful eyes looked at Su Yi again, its eyes fluctuated and its voice changed. Where did you get this? Do you have more? I got it by accident. Senior should be very clear about the benefit. I'm afraid it's much more valuable than the mystical spiritual fruit. In exchange for Senior to let us go, Senior can pretend that you never saw us. It's a good deal. Chapter 495. Staring at Su Yi, the elk's aura fluctuated as it said, "Aren't you afraid that I'll rob you of your treasures after dealing with you? What if you have other treasures on you? I'm at the origin spirit realm, and only want the mystical spiritual fruit. I don't have any other treasures. Since I'm able to hand over the treasure to you, I'm not afraid that you'll attack me. Although my cultivation isn't high enough, I'm still able to protect myself. At most, I'll fight to the death," Su Yi said, not daring to relax his aura. Staring at Su Yi, the elk seemed to be pondering over something as its colorful eyes flickered. "I can let you guys go. Consider this as forming a good karma. You guys can leave now. In 2 days, the exit will open 400 kilometers to the southeast. Many people have already rushed over. You guys take care." After a while, the elk spoke. Glancing at Su Yi, it leaped into the air and left. Is it leaving? Although Situ Muyang roughly knew what Su Yi had given the elk, and that the spiritual liquid was a precious treasure, he was still rather surprised that the elk had actually let them go. His gaze towards Su Yi couldn't help but be filled with admiration. This fellow actually managed to negotiate a deal with a demonic illusory realm expert. Let's go. Someone's coming. There was no time to waste. With such a huge commotion, Su Yi reckoned that quite a number of direct disciples had been alerted and were on their way here. With his current injuries, there was no way he could escape from the hands of those direct disciples. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The shocking commotion in the morning alerted the nearby disciples of the Shenzhen Gate, and they immediately rushed over. "Awoo, there are so many brute beasts. What's going on? An army of brute beasts. It must be Su Yi's doing. Su Yi seems to be able to control the brute beast. He must be inside." The surrounding army of brute beasts made it clear that it was Su Yi's doing. It was rumored that Su Yi was able to control barbaric beasts, and because of this, he had plundered tens of thousands of inner court disciples. "Charge in. We must find Su Yi." With the help of the direct disciples, the number of disciples of the Divine Sword sect also increased even though there were many of them. They were not at a disadvantage. Look at me. L chapter section Evis 7 foot awoo. Swish swish, bang bang bang. All of a sudden, a great battle was on the verge of breaking out. Roaring like thunder, sword light violently swept across, and yuan qi of various attributes erupted. The muffled sound was like thunder, and the ground shook and cracked. Among the crowd, a white-robed young man stood tall and straight. His black eyes shone with a dazzling light. Wherever his figure passed, the barbarian beasts would be sent flying. Not far away, there was a slender figure with unfathomable footwork. Yuan Qi surged beneath his feet as he shuttled through the herd of beasts. He wore a light purple robe embroidered with green silk patterns. This figure was young, about 20 years old. He had a square jaw, clear eyes, sword-like eyebrows, and a handsome face. From time to time, there would be sword light in his hand. Wherever the sword light passed, the blood of the barbarian beasts would splatter. Swish, among the herd of beasts, there was a man with a straight figure. His sharp eyes were like sword light. His elegant and handsome face was calm, but the sword light in his hand was like lightning. The corpses of the barbarian beasts in front of him were bleeding profusely. Beside him, another young man leaped into the air. He had a tall and slender figure, sharp eyebrows, thin lips, and a pair of dark red eyes. He seemed to be in his 20s, and his body was emitting an oppressive aura. His sword light was like a raging flame that swept in all directions. Awu! The beasts roared like thunder. Among the herd of beasts, a beautiful figure appeared. Yuan Qi surged from the soles of her feet. She leaped into the air and was surrounded by light. Her dress was like a mist, and the pattern was like a blooming lotus. The sword light in her hand was wreaking havoc. Behind this woman, there was another beautiful figure. Yuan Qi surged from the soles of her feet, and her body was dancing with her hair. Under the green water element light, she looked even more charming. Her phoenix eyes were shining with green light, and the corner of her mouth was curled up. The sword in her hand swept out. Every move she made was like a dancer, bringing about a kind of beauty. Swish, swish, the sword light was like a rainbow. This woman's sword moves were like a dance, incomparably beautiful and touching. However, wherever the sword light passed, the blood of the herd of beasts would splatter, and the ground would crack. Senior brother Yunling Feng, senior brother Nanli Ran, senior brother O Luo, senior brother Gu Qinyu, senior sister Sakura Asaka, senior sister Gongqi, are they all here? They actually appeared at the same time. This group of transcendents have all appeared. Su-yi must be inside. We must not let him escape again. The disciples of Shunjian Gate were in an uproar. The top-ranked experts of the Sword Pagoda were all here. This time, Su-yi would not be able to escape even if he had wings. On one side of the herd of beasts, a beautiful figure appeared. She was light and ethereal. Her orange clothes were fluttering in the wind, and her black hair was tied up in a ponytail behind her head. She had an otherworldly temperament, as if she was a fairy that had descended from the heavens. The beautiful figure was only 16 or 17 years old. Her red lips were tender, and her eyes were clear like water. Under her orange clothes, her body was graceful and slender, and her curves were curvy. A strange aura was released in the surrounding area. The strange thing was that after feeling the aura of this young girl, the surrounding beasts trembled for no reason. They did not dare to get close to her, and their fierce eyes were filled with fear. "Get out of my way," the young girl said. Her figure swept out, and a few strands of hair swayed in the wind, adding a bit of wild temperament. She quietly shuttled through the herd of beasts. While the battle was shocking, Su-yi and Situmuyang had already left. When it came to finding a hiding place, Su-yi was already experienced. Otherwise, Su-yi would not have been able to stay in the barbaric demon forest for 3 years. The cliff was hard for apes to climb. In a hidden cave, Su-yi and Situmuyang sat cross-legged and consumed elixirs to heal their injuries. This time, both of them were in a miserable state. They were severely injured, and they were not a match for the demonic illusory realm beast. Situmuyang was in a worse state. His old injuries had not healed, and now he had new injuries. Although the healing speed in the mysterious space was much faster, Su-yi did not dare to use the mysterious space casually after knowing that there was a guardian in the battlefield of myriad swords. Su-yi did not lack elixirs, and he was not stingy with himself. He consumed the elixirs and circulated the Origin Supreme technique to heal his injuries. He was about to reach the exit, and he could encounter those personal disciples at any time. The news of him possessing the mystical spiritual fruit had already spread. In addition, he had plundered the spatial bags of tens of thousands of inner disciples. Sui knew that once he was discovered, he would be in big trouble. He had to maintain his peak condition at all times. Chapter 496. The scarlet light on his body slowly converged, and a scarlet light flashed in his eyes. Su Yi's pale face also recovered its rosy color. Feeling the situation in his body, Su Yi's expression was not relaxed. He had taken a lot of medicinal pills to heal his injuries, but his injuries were only about 70 to 80% better. He had not fully recovered. At this moment, if someone knew about Su Yi's situation, they would be stunned. With such a serious injury, in just 1 day and 1 night, Su Yi had almost recovered, but he was still not satisfied. If it was an ordinary person under normal circumstances, no matter how talented they would not be able to recover to 70 to 80% in less than 10 days or half a month. Feeling the aura fluctuations on Su Yi's body, Situ Muyang also stopped breathing and adjusted his breathing. A touch of rosy color hung on his face, and he was no longer pale. However, his situation was much worse than Su Yi's. "It's almost time to go out, right?" Situ Muyang looked at Su Yi with a bit of worship in his eyes. "It should be tomorrow, but there is only one exit." Su Yi frowned slightly. Calculating the time, the exit would open tomorrow. Before entering the battlefield of 10,000 swords, Su Yi also knew about the situation of the exit. There was only one exit in the entire battlefield of 10,000 swords. On the day the exit opened, the disciples who did not go out within the stipulated time would be regarded as eliminated. At that time, even if he had enough sword pattern stones, he would not be able to enter the top 68 to ascend the spirit sword peak for the final battle. Those direct disciples did not find him. With the temptation of the mystical spiritual fruit, it was not difficult for Su Yi to know that everyone would be waiting for him at the exit. No matter how strong he was, it would be difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands at that time. Zhang Lingyun, who was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, was already so tyrannical. Those direct disciples who were ranked higher would be more powerful than the previous one. "What should we do? I'm afraid those guys won't give up so easily." Situ Muyang also knew how many people had been provoked in the myriad sword battlefield. Not to mention the allure of the mystical spiritual fruit in Su Yi's possession, just the fact that Su Yi had plundered tens of thousands of inner disciples and the black brick in the past 2 days was enough to incite public anger. Once they appeared, they would definitely be besieged. Very troublesome. Su Yi pondered, but couldn't think of a solution. There was only a single exit. Unless one chose to hide and not leave, one would definitely encounter all of the direct disciples. "You've provoked too many people. You've angered everyone." Situ Muyang glanced at Su Yi. "You have a part in the brick auction too." Su Yi glanced at Situ Muyang and reminded him. We'll share blessings and hardships together. I understand." Situ Muyang smiled embarrassedly. He knew that he had gained a lot in this myriad sword battlefield. "We'll cross the bridge when we get there. Let's not worry about it now. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Guard me first, I need to do something," Su Yi said. He wanted to enter the mysterious space and asked Situ Muyang to guard him. For safety's sake, Su Yi searched the surroundings. After confirming that it was safe, he called out the mysterious space. MX. In the mysterious space, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing and the rest were refining the mystical spiritual fruit after consuming it. Yuan Qi rippled from their bodies and their auras rose. It wasn't hard to tell that they had benefited greatly from the mystical spiritual fruit. "Lord! The mystical sun gold demon falcon and the wolf head demon bat both came to Sui. Their eyes were filled with reverence, and their auras were vigorous. Have they both broken through, feeling the aura of the mystical sun gold demon falcon and the wolf head demon bat? Sui's lips curled into a smile. Sui wasn't surprised by the mystical sun gold demon falcon and the wolf head demon bat's breakthroughs in such a short time. Immediately, Sui took out a pile of interspatial bags and opened them in the mysterious space. Unfortunately, the primeval stones in the interspatial bags couldn't be preserved and turned into dust. As the space in the mysterious space grew larger, it seemed that increasing the space in the mysterious space wasn't something that could be done with a small amount of primeval stones. After that, herbs, miscellaneous items, elixirs, spiritual herbs, weapons, and a pile of cultivation resources were placed in front of Sui. The interspatial bag of Zhang Lingyun, who was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, became the focus of Sui. Sure enough, as Sui expected, the harvest was great. There were 13 sword pattern stones, a few stalks of spiritual herbs, elixirs, herbs, and a few sets of martial skills. However, these martial skills were ordinary. The profound and spiritual martial skills were from the Xinjian Gate. Sui wasn't interested in them. However, martial skills were expensive and he could exchange them for what he needed. In the end, Sui counted and found that there were 69 sword pattern stones in the interspatial bags. In addition to the sword pattern stones that he had, there were a lot of them. There were close to 150 of them. After leaving the elixirs in the mysterious space and planting the spiritual herbs, Sui waved his sleeves and stood up. Looking at the spiritual herbs in front of him, including the mystical spirit tree and a pile of elixirs, Sui smiled. This was his family's property, the property that he had painstakingly built. After tidying up everything, Sui took the wolf head demonic bat leader and let the mystical sun golden demonic falcon stay in the mysterious space. It seems to have broken through? In the cave, when the wolf head demonic bat appeared from the mysterious space, Situ Muyang felt that the wolf head demonic bat's aura was much stronger than before. This kind of strength was not only in terms of cultivation level, but also from the inside out. That kind of feeling was like a metamorphosis, as if the bones and marrow had been cleansed. Ao, the wolf head demonic bat howled in a low voice, as if it was responding to Situ Muyang. There was a bloody light in its eyes. Only it knew what kind of benefits it had obtained this time. You've been here for too long. There's still quite a distance to the exit. We have to hurry, Situ Muyang said. Sui had stayed in there for nearly 6 hours. It was already noon and the exit would open tomorrow. There was still quite a distance to the exit. No rush, we have enough time. Sui smiled slightly, walked out of the cave and stretched. With the wolf-headed bat demon leader by his side, he had more than enough time, and also a little more assurance. A moment later, the sun rose from the east. The wolf-head demonic bat leader flapped its wings and soared into the sky, carrying Sui and Situ Muyang towards the southeast. On the back of the wolf-head demonic bat, the two youths' clothes were tattered and their hair was messy. They looked no different from beggars. However, the two of them were in a good mood, especially Sui. This trip to the Myriad Sword battlefield was quite fruitful. 6th level demon spirit realm. Even the top few direct disciples wouldn't be able to do anything to us. Chapter 497. Don't be careless. The wolf-headed demonic bat chief had benefited from reaching the 6th level of the origin spirit realm. Sui could sense that the aura of the wolf-headed demonic bat wasn't far from the 7th level of the demon spirit realm. The wolf-headed demonic bat chief's flying speed was indeed a huge advantage, but he couldn't afford to be careless. Sui estimated that the top few direct disciples were all extraordinary. They all had their own means, so he couldn't afford to be careless. I'll call you Wolf Bat in the future. Su-yi said to the wolf-headed demonic bat chief. Aolo! The wolf-headed demonic bat responded with a roar. It spread its wings, emitting a blood-red glow. Its speed was astonishing. According to the wolf-headed demonic bat's speed, it wouldn't take long before tomorrow to reach the exit. Su-yi began to ponder. Once they reached the exit, it would be the start of the trouble. Furthermore, the mystic sun golden demonic falcon and wolf-headed demonic bat had benefited from the mysterious space. Their futures were boundless. He wondered if he could bring them out. Do you think we'll have a chance if we force our way out when the exit opens? Situ Muyang asked Su-yi. Someone's coming. Just as Situ Muyang's voice faded, Su-yi suddenly raised his gaze and looked behind him. Oh! The beast roared like thunder. A black light appeared behind him and gradually approached. Looking at it carefully, it was a huge exotic beast. It looked like a dragon with 8 wings on its back. It didn't have claws under its abdomen, but its entire body was emitting a black light. Its pair of ferocious eyes emitted a chilling light that made one tremble. Its aura was ferocious and ferocious. It's the 8-winged demonic python. There's someone on it. Situ Muyang turned around and looked behind him. The ferocious exotic beast was the 8-winged demonic python that fought with the wolf-headed demonic bat not long ago. Su-yi's gaze swept across the 8-winged demonic python. Shortly after, his pupils slightly shrank as his gaze fell on the figure on the back of the 8-winged demonic python. It was a graceful figure in orange clothes. She wasn't old. Her lips were tender, her eyes were clear, and her figure was slender and graceful under her orange clothes. It's her. Su-yi's expression changed. How could he forget this girl? When he was about to leave the Xinjian gate, it was because of the small 9-hell snake that he encountered this girl. Her cultivation was not bad, and they had fought before. It looks like a woman. Do you know her? Looking at Su-yi's expression, Situ Muyang asked. Not really, but enemies often cross paths. Su-yi helplessly smiled. He only knew that this young girl had said that she was called Mu Yao. However, this was a case of enemies meeting on a narrow road. He didn't know how this woman had managed to subdue the 8-winged demon python. So, she had caught up with him at this moment. Perhaps she wouldn't have any good intentions. The last time they fought, there was no clear victor. However, Su-yi knew that the girl was strong. Although Su-yi had not used his full strength last time, he had broken through a lot during this period of time. However, Su-yi also knew that the girl did not use her full strength last time. Furthermore, judging from the current situation, Mu Yao was able to subdue the 8-winged demon python, which was at the peak of the 5th-level demon spirit realm. Su-yi, our previous battle hasn't ended yet. How about we fight now? Mu Yao said on the back of the 8-winged demon python. She had been searching for so long and she finally found this guy. She's just a little girl. Why don't we deal with her first? She might have a sword-patterned stone on her. Situ Muyang was eager to give it a try. This girl was the one who delivered herself to his doorstep. He could feel that the girl wasn't ordinary. She might have a sword-patterned stone on her. Su-yi rolled his eyes at Situ Muyang. The little devil in this guy's heart has been completely awakened. A little girl? That Mu Yao seems to be a little older than this guy. This girl isn't easy to deal with. It's better to avoid her. Su-yi shook his head and said to Situ Muyang, if this guy knew about Mu Yao's strength, he wouldn't say such words. Immediately after, Su-yi ordered the wolf bat to fly at full speed. Now wasn't the time to fight with the girl. Once they did, it would attract the attention of the direct disciples nearby. Aolo, the wolf-headed demonic bat responded. It flapped its wings, emitting a blood-colored radiance. Its speed suddenly increased. Do you think you can run away? Chase after him. On the back of the 8-winged demon python, Mu Yao's expression changed. Her black hair was tied behind her head. Her hair danced in the wind, giving her a wild beauty. The 8-winged demon python chased after her. The pitiful 8-winged demon python recognized Su-yi, who was on the back of the wolf-headed demonic bat. There was still lingering fear in its heart. That fear was still vivid in its mind. However, it had no choice but to chase after him. Su-yi, you won't be able to run away. A voice mixed with yuan qi came out from Mu Yao's mouth, resounding in the air. Her master actually thinks that this kid isn't ordinary. She said that there's always someone better than you. That can't be referring to this kid, right? If it wasn't for her master, she wouldn't have left. Ever since they arrived at the myriad sword battlefield, Mu Yao had been looking for this fella. She heard that this fella still had a lot of sword-patterned stones on him. Most importantly, he also had the mystical spiritual fruit that she wanted. Although the 8-winged demon python was fast, it couldn't catch up to the wolf bat. At the same level, the 8-winged demon python and the wolf-headed demonic bat were about the same in terms of speed. However, the 8-winged demon python was heavily injured by Su-yi last time. It was still injured for a short period of time. On the other hand, the wolf bat was different. Not only did it recover from its injuries, it also received great benefit. It even broke through to the 6th level of the demon spirit realm. It even reached the 7th level of the demon spirit realm. Therefore, the 8-winged demon python simply couldn't catch up with the wolf bat in terms of speed at this moment. The wolf bat had left the 8-winged demon python far behind in a short while under the full acceleration of the wolf bat. Su-yi, if you have the ability, don't run. You bastard, hurry up. It's the SK version. Chapter A0 / Mu Yao was so angry that she pouted her tender red lips, then angrily stomped on the 8-winged python's foot. Roar! The 8-winged demon python was very helpless. It was suffering unspeakably. It was also very shocked at this moment. That wolf-headed demonic bat was unexpectedly so fast. It seemed that its cultivation had skyrocketed a lot. It had already gone all out. However, there was no way it could catch up with it. Su-yi, where do you think you're going? You can't escape. Looking at the disappearing figure of the wolf-headed demon bat, Mu Yao's eyes suddenly moved. Her angry face revealed a smile, and her voice was mixed with yuan qi as she shouted. Su-yi, you can't escape. Hand over the mystical spirit fruit and the sword-patterned stone. The voice mixed with yuan qi came from Mu Yao's mouth. It was like a clap of thunder, resounding through the air and echoing through the forest. Haha, that little girl must be mad with anger. Too bad, she can't catch up with us. Situ Muyang laughed. With the wolf bat's current speed, the 8-winged demon python couldn't catch up with them. She's not mad with anger. She's doing it on purpose. Su-yi bitterly smiled. His expression darkened. That woman is too sinister. Roar! Roar! Chapter 498. Immediately after, many beasts soared into the sky from all directions. There was a 4-winged, crimson beast with a powerful aura. There was a white spiritual horse with a pair of wings on its back. Its body was strong and its body was glowing. There was a huge butterfly with electric arcs on its wings. When it flapped its wings, it was as if lightning filled the air. In an instant, numerous savage beasts soared into the sky and appeared from all directions. Every single one of them was formed from elemental energy and looked extremely lifelike. On the backs of these beasts were the figures of young men and women. Their figures were extraordinary, and their auras were powerful. 4-winged hellfire beast, cloud dragon colt, thunderclap butterfly. Situ Muyang's expression changed. The beasts formed from vitality were all very powerful. They were not much weaker than his nether void rock. The figures on the beasts formed from vitality were also very powerful. Awoo! The beasts soared into the sky from all directions. Their auras were powerful. They soared into the sky and surrounded Su-yi. Let's see how you escape this time. On the back of the 8-winged demon python, Mu Yao smiled. Her delicate red lips pouted. She was young, but she was already a national beauty. This is troublesome. That little girl did it on purpose. She wants to attract all the direct disciples. What should we do now? At this moment, Situ Muyang finally understood. That woman had done it on purpose by causing such a huge commotion. She wanted to lure out the powerful personal disciples nearby to surround Su Yi and him. Wolf Bat, avoid them. Su Yi's eyes darkened as he swept his gaze across the area. Although the direct disciples who were chasing after them were strong, they were still in midair. Their speed might not be as fast as the wolf bats, and the consumption of their energy would not be less than that of the wolf bat. Awoo! The wolf bat growled and its eyes were fierce. It had just undergone a metamorphosis. In terms of speed, how could it be slower than the beasts formed from vitality? It spread its wings and a murderous aura spread across the sky. When the beasts rushed forward to surround it, it had already avoided them. Su Yi, where are you going? Hand over the mystical spirit fruit and the sword-patterned stone. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape. Awoo! In an instant the ancient world shook. The roars of the beasts and the shouts merged together, deafening the ears as they soared into the sky. His aura swept across the sky. Not long after, there were beasts formed from Yuan Qi that soared into the air, rushing out from the mountains and forests, joining the formation that surrounded Su Yi. The speed of the wolf bat was very fast, but at this moment, under the encirclement of the beast phantoms that appeared from all directions, it could not help but be greatly affected, and its speed was greatly reduced. QP Starter Y. Fortunately, with the wolf bat's current speed, even though it was greatly reduced, it was still able to avoid the beasts coming from all directions. The shadow of a black falcon was emitting black light. It was very fast. On the back of the black falcon, a young man in his 20s appeared in front of the wolf bat. He had distinct facial features and a cold expression on his face. He wore a tight black battle suit, and a gray cape fluttered behind him. He looked at Su Yi and said, "Let's continue the battle." Iolo, the wolf bat flapped its wings and its body drew an arc in the air as it dodged the attack. "No!" Su Yi waved his hand and left. "That guy doesn't seem weak. Do you know him?" Sword 11, ranked 15th in the Sword Pagoda. Back then, he was defeated by me. He seemed a little unconvinced. Su Yi chuckled. He did not expect to see Sword 11 again. This is not good. There are more and more people chasing after us. Situ Muyang was not surprised. Sword 11 was only ranked 15th in the Sword Pagoda. Zhang Lingyun, ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, was no match for him. However, looking at the increasing number of beasts formed from Yuan Qi around them, he also became a little nervous. Su Yi also focused. There were many personal disciples in the entire Shenzhen Gate. There were thousands of them. Those who could become personal disciples were all at the origin spirit realm and could form Yuan Qi. Usually, those who chose to form Yuan Qi were flying barbaric beasts. Therefore, at least half of the personal disciples Yuan Qi forms were flying barbaric beasts. Adding up the number, there were at least thousands. If thousands of personal disciples formed Yuan Qi to surround them, no matter how fast the wolf bat was, it would not be able to dodge. Awoo! The beast roared like thunder. More and more beasts formed from Yuan Qi appeared in all directions, shaking the clouds. The wolf bat was getting more and more tired. There were a few times when it was about to be surrounded. Su Yi, you can't escape. You can't escape even if you have wings. The 8-winged demonic python took the opportunity to catch up. Black light filled the air. Mu Yao spoke with a smile on her delicate face. Mu Yao looked at everything that she had caused proudly. No matter how cunning Su Yi was, he would not be able to escape from her palm. That little girl is too cunning. Situ Muyang looked back at Mu Yao, who was on the back of the 8-winged demonic python. He looked at her from afar with an angry expression. A woman's heart is the most poisonous. When you grow up, you must be more careful. The more beautiful a woman is, the more poisonous she is. Sui said. This woman was so cunning at such a young age. When she grew up, she would be even worse. He had underestimated this woman. Is that so? When you get married in the future, will you find an ugly woman? The uglier she is, the more you like her? Situmuyang was somewhat puzzled and asked Sui. Sui fiercely glared at Situmuyang and snappily said, "What does a little brat know?" "Didn't you say so?" Situmuyang curled his lips and looked at the beasts formed from Yuan Qi in all directions. He said to Sui, "We should quickly think of a way. Otherwise, it will be really troublesome." Sui pondered. At this moment, the personal disciples were surrounding them from all directions. Even if they wanted to escape now, there was no way. There must be a way. Sui pondered for a moment. Suddenly, there was a flash of light in his eyes and the corners of his mouth lifted into a smile. "Come, then, the more the better. If you want to trick me, then let's see who will deal with who." Sui smiled with a smile in his eyes. He looked at the sunset and the sky was close to dusk. He said to the wolf bat, "Go to the exit. What method have you thought of? Quickly tell us." Situmuyang curiously asked. "You will know when the time comes." Sui smiled but did not speak. He had almost forgotten one thing. The sun was setting in the west. The setting sun was like blood, enveloping this ancient world. Awu, the beasts roared like thunder. The overwhelming Yuan Qi transformed into beasts suspended in the sky. Their aura soared into the sky. Thousands of beasts, thousands of figures, thousands of personal disciples of the Shenzhen Gate, stepping on Yuan Qi transformed beasts, surrounded Sui and Situmuyang. This was definitely the most united of all the personal disciples of the Shenzhen Gate. There was no need to say anything. They surrounded Sui with all their strength. Awu, the roars of those beasts were getting farther and farther away. Yi Shiwen had completely gotten rid of those pro-disciples who had besieged him. The eight-winged demon python was also left far behind. However, Sui knew that this kind of escape was only temporary. Those personal disciples would definitely not give up. Of course, Sui did not plan on completely getting rid of those personal disciples. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Its silver brilliance illuminated this ancient world. Under the moonlight, the outlines of the mountains and ravines were clear and the shadows of the trees were dancing. The blood light on the wolf bat's body fluctuated, reflecting the radiance of the bright moon. Far away, a winding mountain range appeared, winding and spiraling, like a huge dragon sleeping in the night. The mountain range was continuous, as if it had cut across the battlefield of 10,000 swords. The surrounding peaks were surrounded by clouds and mist. "That's the place. That's the place where the exit will open tomorrow," Situmuyang said. That mountain range was the place where the exit would open. "Wolfbat, go there." Sui looked around and pointed to a mountain range, not far away. There, ancient trees towered into the sky, verdant and hazy mist shrouded the area. The wolf bat understood. It spread its wings and dived into the mountain range. Its bloody figure was submerged in the mountain range. "Chase, the exit is in front. That brat can't escape." Uxie/correct. Section 7. Part 1 Cool D Craftsman #NetYW Where else can he escape to? Chase. Night everywhere was boiling and the atmosphere was overflowing. The personal disciples who were left far behind by the wolf bat did not give up. The temptation of the mystical spiritual fruit and the sword-patterned stone was irresistible to everyone. In the night, the eight-winged demonic python's body was covered in black light, faintly discernible in the night. "Let's see where you can escape to." Mu Yao's face was a little ugly. That guy was actually able to escape from her. The mountain range was continuous, and the mountains were uprooted from the ground, piercing into the clouds. On the tallest mountain, There were rugged rocks, and a crack was split open, as if it was split open by a giant axe. The surrounding area was densely packed with towering ancient trees. What was even more strange was that most of the peaks were swallowed by the clouds, leaving only the mountain peak. It was as if one had walked into a fairyland. Su-yi, Situ-muyang, and the wolf bat concealed their auras and hid inside the crack. What are we doing here? If someone chases us, it will be very troublesome. Situ-muyang had already sized up the surroundings. The terrain here was the highest, and it would be troublesome for others to come up. However, if all the personal disciples were to rush over, it would be difficult for them to escape even if they had wings. If they were to be surrounded, even Langbat would not be able to escape. I'm afraid they won't come. Su-yi smiled and a light flashed in his eyes. He found a pile of dead branches and leaves, and tied them with vines, making 2 straw men. He tied them tightly to the wolf bat's back, and then instructed the wolf bat, go around and attract their attention. When the sun rises, there's no need to hide. Come back here directly. Ayo, the wolf bat roared in response, and flapped its wings to fly away. It was like a tiger that had grown wings in the moonlight. What are you trying to do? Situ-muyang was surprised. Su-yi not only did not avoid them, but also purposely attracted everyone. You'll find out tomorrow. Let's do some breathing exercises first, we'll be busy tomorrow. Su-yi's expression was leisurely, and he stuffed a few healing pills into his mouth. Then, he sat down cross-legged on the ground, and continued to do his breathing exercises. He was not afraid of exposing his identity. Situ-muyang did not understand. His face was filled with doubt, and his heart was a little nervous. But Situ-muyang more or less understood Su-yi's character, and chose to believe in Su-yi. At least for tonight, Su-yi would be able to toy with all the personal disciples. These unlucky personal disciples. Thinking about how those personal disciples would chase after the 2 straw men, Situ-muyang suddenly felt a little sorry for them. Since he was still injured, Situ-muyang immediately continued to do his breathing exercises to heal himself. He did not have much time to feel sorry for others. Which wolf-head demon bat is it? It's Su-yi and Situ-muyang. The mysterious spirit fruit and sword pattern stone are on them. Where do you think you're going? Chapter 500. Some people discovered the wolf-headed demonic bat and saw a figure on the back of the wolf-headed demonic bat from afar. They immediately surrounded it and chased after it. Awoo! Some people transformed their yuan qi into flying beasts and soared into the sky. Some people transformed their yuan qi into ferocious beasts and climbed over the mountains. Some inner and outer sect disciples were watching the fun. Their yuan qi surged as they climbed mountains and waded through rivers. They also joined in the chase. This night, around the mountain range, it was destined to be chaotic. Early in the morning, the first rays of the morning sun filled the air. In the blue sky, milky white clouds floated around the mountain range. When the first ray of morning sun shone on Su-yi's face through the crevice of the cliff, Su-yi withdrew his hand seal. His aura fluctuated, and a mouthful of turbid qi was exhaled from his dantian. He opened his eyes. A touch of red flashed from Su-yi's eyes, like red lightning, and then returned to normal. His aura shook, his robes fluttered and then calmed down. Feeling that his injuries had almost healed, his yuan qi was abundant and his soul was full. Su-yi secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but he was still a little worried about the wolf-headed demonic bat's situation. The only /original plus and comma? Everything else is a pirated version. Phew! Situ-muyang also stopped his breathing and retracted his aura. His face was a little ruddy, but his injuries had not completely healed. Awoo! Just as Su-yi was a little worried, a low beast roar sounded. The huge figure of the wolf-headed demonic bat appeared, and a bloody aura descended. Its huge body landed. Lord, many disciples of the Xinjian Gate are rushing over. The wolf-headed demonic aura fluctuated, and a bloody light flashed on its ferocious beast body. There were obvious injuries, and blood was overflowing. The wolf-headed demonic bat encountered an organized ambush last night. It was surrounded and injured, but it successfully escaped. Su Yi's figure swept out and stood on a protruding boulder in front of the crevice of the cliff. Looking into the distance, there were many small light figures coming from afar. "Guard me! Wolf Bat, follow me!" Su Yi quickly leaped down from the boulder and returned to the crack of the cliff. He formed a hand seal, and a ray of light flickered on his forehead. He summoned the mysterious space and brought the wolf bat into the mysterious space. Situ Muyang was at a loss. Until now, he still didn't know what Su Yi was trying to do. He had purposely attracted everyone. Could it be that he wanted to fight? Soon, there was a fluctuation in the mysterious space. Su Yi's figure flashed out. A green light flashed out and disappeared in an instant. Su Yi retracted the mysterious space and leaped onto the protruding rock again. He stared at the light shadow that was getting bigger and bigger in front of him. Many Yuan Qi-formed beasts were getting closer and closer. Awoo! The beasts roared like thunder, and more beasts appeared in the sky. Between the mountains, many disciples of Xinjian Gate leaped over the mountains and searched carefully. That Su Yi is hiding nearby. This time we can't let him escape. That wolf-headed bat disappeared here. Su Yi must be nearby. All the disciples of Xinjian Gate were searching for Su Yi. With so many people surrounding him, no one had found anything. Without a doubt, Su Yi had thoroughly angered everyone. The mystical spiritual fruit and the sword-patterned stone were irresistible temptations to the disciples of Xinjian Gate. Today was the opening day of the battlefield of 10,000 sword. All the mystical spiritual fruits were with Su Yi. This made the direct disciples of Xinjian Gate unwilling to give up. At least half of their goal in entering the battlefield of 10,000 swords was to obtain the mystical spiritual fruit. Who would have thought that in the end, no one would even see the shadow of the mystical spiritual fruit? It was only later that they found out that Su Yi had taken all the mystical spiritual fruits by himself. In the air and on the ground, all the direct disciples were searching carefully. They were determined to find Su Yi even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground. After the failure of the previous day's encirclement, many of the top disciples of the Sword Pagoda had come to a tacit understanding. Su Yi had the wolf-headed bat as his mount, and no one could surround him alone. They had to work together. Thus, under the leadership of these disciples, they began to set up an encirclement. From all directions, they began to encircle and surround them. A large net had been cast from all directions, and now it was time to reel it in. The inner and outer disciples were also forced to join in. Of course, there were few inner disciples who did not take the initiative. They all hoped to find Su Yi and take revenge. There are so many people. They will be here soon. On the protruding rock in front of the cliff, Situ Muyang came to Su Yi's side. As he watched the encirclement get closer and closer, his expression grew more and more solemn. Situ Muyang looked at Su Yi from the corner of his eye, but found that Su Yi's expression was calm, as if he was not worried at all. Su Yi was calm and indifferent as he looked in front of him. Looking at the large group of figures that were searching for him, his eyes carried a smile. These fellows were really ruthless. They wouldn't stop until they surrounded him. Do you have a way or not? I'm afraid that they will be here soon. Situ Muyang rolled his eyes at Su Yi. He really did not know what Su Yi was up to. Don't worry. They came so quickly, but they will escape even faster. Su Yi smiled mysteriously. His eyes occasionally looked up at the sky, and there was a trace of nervousness in his calm gaze. If you can't escape, they will be the first to come after you. Situ Muyang was helpless. He really could not figure out how Su Yi could escape. Anyway, at this point, even if he wanted to break out now, he could not. He could only wait quietly for Sue to open the gourd and see what this guy was up to. Search, he must be inside. The densely packed figures were getting closer and closer, and the encirclement was getting smaller and smaller. They were getting closer and closer to the mountain peak where Sue and Situmuyang were. The crowd was in an uproar. Although Suyi's name was enough to make the hearts of many disciples tremble. But at this moment there were so many people here. Almost all the tens of thousands of Xinjiang Gate disciples in the battlefield of myriad swords had joined the encirclement. This gave everyone a lot of courage. No matter how strong Sui was, could he fight against all the Xinjiang Gate disciples? Sui, Situmuyang, they are there. Suddenly, the disciples of the Divine Sword sect discovered two silhouettes from afar on the ferocious beast silhouettes formed from the origin chi. Those were their current targets. Sui, Situmuyang, they are there. We finally found them. They are there. Go after them. One by one, they looked in the direction of the gaze. Suddenly, there was a hubbub of voices. They had finally found their target. A whoa, swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, the roars of the beasts were like thunder. The roars shook the sky, and the beasts made of Yuan Qi moved together. Chapter 501. Tens of thousands of Xinjiang Gate disciples seemed to be united against a common enemy, shaking the mountains and forests. Their auras gathered together, and the momentum was astonishing. Such a scene was shocking. Awu in midair, the figure of the eight-winged demon python appeared. Mu Yao, who was on its back, had an unsightly expression as she gazed at the figures of Sui and Situmuyang in the distance. She said, "Let's see where the two of you can escape to now." "Not good, they have found us." Situmuyang's face was a little pale. There were so many Xinjiang Gate disciples. Even if he had absolute confidence in himself, he knew that it was impossible to deal with so many people. Sui did not have time to raise his head and look above the void. At this moment, his face was a little nervous. He murmured, "It's time. Come quickly, or it will be a big game." "Awu, Sui, this time you can't escape. Let's see where you can escape to." In all directions, the figures were getting closer and closer. The densely packed Yuan energy-formed beast figures in the air were even faster. On the backs of each of the Yuan energy-formed beast figures were extraordinary young disciples of the Divine Sword sect. At this moment, they were united against a common enemy, and their target was Sui. "We are in big trouble, big trouble." Situmuyang could no longer believe in Sui. The Xinjiang Gate disciples had already reached the foot of the mountain and were about to come up. This was really big trouble. Sui quietly clenched his fists and looked up at the sky from time to time. His indifferent face began to surge with a touch of seriousness. In the early morning, the morning sun rose and the morning glow covered the sky. Suddenly, without knowing when, the bright morning glow gradually dimmed. A black cloud quietly diffused out of the sky and spread out, unknowingly covering the morning sun. This ancient world suddenly began to dim. "Haha, you came at the right time." Sui smiled and relaxed his tightly clenched fists. A smile appeared on his face and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Boom! In this instant, the sky above trembled for no reason. At this moment, the atmosphere between heaven and earth became incomparably oppressive. "What's going on?" When Situmuyang felt it, his heart trembled for no reason. Even his soul inexplicably trembled. The barbaric beasts in this ancient world seemed to have sensed something. Suddenly, the entire place fell silent. The beasts formed from Yuan Qi under the feet of the personal disciples were also trembling at this moment, their speed greatly reduced. "What's going on?" At this moment, the disciples of Xinjiang Gate also felt it. This was especially the case for the strongest direct disciples. Their gazes shifted to the sky at the same time. Above the mountain peak, more and more black clouds appeared, becoming denser and denser. No one could see that on the peak above Su Yi's head, a touch of green and red light pervaded the air, and a carrot the size of a baby appeared. This was the blood jade spirit ginseng. It had just come out from the mysterious space. Its dense and thin roots were spreading out at this moment, fluttering in the wind. It was also suffused with a kind of green and red color. There were a few palm-sized green leaves on its head, sparkling and translucent. Its body flickered with light, revealing two lifelike eyes, solemnly staring at the dark clouds in the sky. What's going on? There seems to be a huge pressure. Something's not right. What's going on? One by one, the disciples of Shinjian Gate froze in place. This inexplicable movement, accompanied by an invisible and astonishing pressure, caused their souls to tremble uncontrollably. They suddenly did not dare to casually approach. Everyone's gazes involuntarily shifted to the sky, feeling the direction of the movement's origin. It's Su Yi. Is he behind this? Everyone looked into the distance, feeling the astonishing aura, and immediately suspected Su Yi. The place where the astonishing aura came from was where Su Yi was. Buzz, above the sky, thick black clouds were vast and mighty, and electric arcs appeared quietly, illuminating the dusky world. In an instant the world changed greatly. The entire sky was occupied by dazzling thunderclouds, and a kind of thunder and lightning pressure pervaded the air. Not good! In an instant, the hearts of all the people and savage beasts in this ancient world throbbed, and a chill ran down their spines. I will read the original chapter. On the festival $2 Cool G Craftsman, the savage beasts in this battlefield of 10,000 swords also felt it, and the roars of beasts came from afar. In the forest there were fierce savage beasts, whose fierce eyes were like copper bells, looking at the distant void, trembling all over. Thunderclouds, why are there thunderclouds? F***ck, what's going on? Is it Su Yi's doing? Eyes trembled as they looked at the void, and their figures involuntarily trembled. On the phantom of a four-winged earth fire beast, there was a young man in his 20s. He had a slender figure, sharp eyebrows, a high nose bridge, and thin lips. A pair of pitch-black eyes were filled with red light, looking at the thunderclouds in the distant void, and a light flashed in his eyes. Lei Wei, could it be on the back of the eight-winged demonic python? Mu Yao's orange clothes fluttered, and her face changed greatly. The phantom of a white spiritual horse, with a pair of wings on its back, was vigorous, and its whole body was shining. On it, there was a charming woman with her black hair dancing, and her eyes shining. There was a huge phantom of a butterfly, and its wings were filled with electric arcs. When it flapped its wings, it seemed to be filled with lightning. On it, there was a young man with long black hair, looking at the flashing lightning in the sky, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Are we in trouble? Situ Muyang exclaimed. At this moment they could feel the mighty aura, and it made them tremble with fear. Their hair stood on end, and their souls were restless. Zzz on the mountain peak, the thunderclouds were getting thicker and thicker. The blood jasper spirit ginseng's body began to emit a green and red light. It stood with its head held high, and the green leaves on its head suddenly expanded, bursting with a kind of power. It also emitted a kind of medicinal fragrance. If people smelled it, it would make them salivate. Zzz soon, from the thunderclouds, one after another, bright lightning flashed, as if connecting the sky and the earth, and directly fell on the blood jasper spirit ginseng, accompanied by a mighty pressure. Rumble! The sound of thunder was unceasing. With the blood jasper spirit ginseng as the center, the lightning was like a volcanic eruption. It was endless, and it came from all directions, crazily surging and crazily descending. This was a tribulation, not an ordinary lightning, but a punishment from the heavens. From all directions, this shocking scene made everyone's hair stand on end, and their souls tremble. What is that? Run! Not good. This is the initial tribulation. There is a heaven and earth spirit or a barbaric demonic beast crossing the tribulation. Run, run. This is a tribulation, we can't touch it, it will provoke karma, run. There was a loud shout, and some disciples felt that something was wrong. That was a tribulation, and if anyone was touched by it, even if they didn't die, they would be affected by karma. Run, run. Chapter 502. Lightning bolts fell from the sky. Even though they were separated by a great distance, they were already suffocating. The terrifying power of the thunder made people's hair stand on end, their hearts turn cold, and their hair stand on end. Hearing someone shout, the disciples recovered from their shock and immediately fled. Some of the disciples were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. The majestic thunder and lightning aura brought with it the pressure of heaven and earth, as if it wanted to destroy everything. The disciples who were scared could only crawl and roll away. Frightened and panicked, they cried for their parents everywhere, "Run, run quickly! Help! What the hell is going on?" The sound of thunder, crying for their parents, and horrified voices mixed together and resounded through this ancient world. The beasts formed by the Yuan Qi under the feet of the direct disciples were all frightened and disappeared at this moment. Go! When the thunder and lightning fell, Sui returned to the crack in the cliff. The light between his eyebrows shone and he called out the mysterious space and hid inside it. This was the blood jasper spirit ginseng's tribulation again. Surrounded by all the direct disciples of the Xinjian Gate, Sui also remembered that the blood jasper spirit ginseng was about to undergo tribulation again. Calculating the time, he might as well summon everyone. Sui did not want to use this opportunity to kill these Xinjian Gate disciples, but he had no other choice. Moreover, the blood jasper spirit ginseng was about to undergo tribulation and these disciples could escape. Suyi's goal was to escape successfully. Situ Muyang entered the mysterious space. Under the pressure of the thunder and lightning, although he entered the mysterious space immediately, he was still in a state of shock. His gaze was fixed on Sui, his throat moved, and he was somewhat speechless. Boss Sui, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Tan Chao, and the others all woke up at this moment. They were puzzled when they saw Sui suddenly enter and quickly leave. However, at this moment, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, and the others' auras were clearly stronger than before they had consumed the mystical spirit fruit. Su Yi's gaze swept across the group. Lu Ji, Zhang Qing, and the others' auras couldn't escape Su Yi's prying. The most shocking one was Su Jiahui, who was already at the 5th level of the Origin Profound Realm. With Su Jiahui's age, she had already reached the 5th level of the Origin Profound Realm. This was already shocking enough. Su Yi still remembered that when he was in Barbarian City, Sacred Mountain's Ji Chao had just reached the 1st level of the Yuan Profound Realm. In comparison, the current Su Jiahui was already terrifying enough. However, Su Yi was well aware that Su Jiahui's progress had far surpassed that of Ji Chao back on the Sacred Mountain. That was because of the mysterious space, the spirit liquid, and the effects of the mystical spirit fruit. How many people in the world would have such an opportunity to transform consecutively? Sui estimated that once they left the myriad sword battlefield, Su Jiahui would be able to attract the attention of the entire Xinjian Gate. Zhang Qing followed closely behind Su Jiahui and was already at the 4th level of the Origin Profound Realm. Although Lu Ji and the others' foundations were slightly weaker, they had already broken through 2 levels and reached the 3rd level of the Origin Profound Realm. Mu Yong Jiu T exempt equals Phi JCK0 Novel 0. Several people looked at Su Yi with grateful gazes. They knew very well what they had obtained. It was an opportunity that they didn't even dare to dream of. Only a small number of direct disciples were able to obtain the mystical spirit fruit, and the spirit liquid was an unimaginable treasure. All of this was because of this youth in ragged clothes, who seemed to be in a sorry state, but had an arrogant temperament. How could they not be grateful? Because of this youth, they were able to transform and change their destinies. Could it be that the blood jasper spirit ginseng was undergoing tribulation? At this moment, Situ Muyang, who was still in shock, regained his senses. He still remembered that the blood jasper spirit ginseng was about to undergo tribulation in this mysterious space. Furthermore, Su-Yi seemed to have brought out something when he entered this space. It should be the blood jasper spirit ginseng. Su-Yi nodded. He wasn't worried about the Xinjian Gate disciples, but he was worried about the blood jasper spirit ginseng. Previously, the blood jasper spirit ginseng failed to undergo tribulation. This time, it could try again, but if it failed again, the consequences would be severe. I see, haha, Situ Muyang laughed. At this moment, he finally understood what Su-Yi was trying to sell. It turned out that this guy had already calculated that he would attract all the Xinjian Gate disciples and let the blood jasper spirit ginseng undergo tribulation. Perhaps none of the Xinjian Gate disciples would have thought that Su-Yi would come back with such a trick. Under this tribulation, no one could stop it. All of them were scared out of their wits and could only flee in panic. Thinking of the last scene, when he saw the Xinjian Gate disciples running away in panic and crying for their parents, Situ Muyang looked at Su-Yi again. The worship in his eyes was even stronger, and he admired him so much that he wanted to prostrate himself in front of him. Being surrounded by all the disciples of the Sword God sect was probably unprecedented in the history of the Xinjian Gate. However, he deliberately attracted all the disciples of the Xinjian Gate and played with them one by one. Finally, he could make all of them run away crying for their parent. Who else could do this? Rumble, in this mountain range, large amounts of thunder and lightning constantly fell, blowing up the surrounding mountains and destroying everything. The thunder and lightning around the blood jasper spirit ginseng was the most concentrated. The thunder and lightning struck the blood jasper spirit ginseng with mighty pressure. The seemingly fragile emerald green leaf on the top of its head broke out a strange power and directly resisted. Thunder and lightning covered the blood jasper spirit ginseng, and electric arcs raged. However, at this moment, the blood jasper spirit ginseng's body was surging with light, faintly carrying a destructive and majestic aura. This aura was somewhat similar to the aura in the mysterious space. It could directly obliterate the power of these electric arcs and then devour them. Above the sky, rolling thunder clouds surged, as if they had been provoked. An extremely terrible thunder and lightning suddenly emerged, and then filled the sky. All of the divine sword sect's disciples had already retreated in all directions. Most of the disciples were crawling and rolling as they escaped, running far, far away. Looking at the terrible thunder and lightning falling, their throats rolled, and they swallowed their saliva. Their souls were throbbing. If they had fled a little slower, they would have been struck by the thunder and lightning and turned into charcoal. In the distance, on the top of the mountain, the 8-winged demonic python was trembling all over. It crawled on the ground, curled up, and trembled all over. Its fierce eyes were filled with fear. Mu Yao's eyes flickered as she stared into the distance with a shocked expression. She could feel the terrifying pressure of the lightning even though they were separated by space. She muttered softly, "A spiritual being of heaven and earth is actually undergoing a tribulation." Not far away, on the top of the mountain, many outstanding disciples of the Xinjian Gate gathered. Looking at the thunder and lightning in the distance, they were all trembling with fear. There is a spiritual creature of heaven and earth or a savage demonic beast going through the tribulation. This is also an opportunity. Once the spiritual creature of heaven and earth or a savage demonic beast fails, it will be our chance. Even if it succeeds, it will be extremely weak for a short period of time. This is a great opportunity. Once we get it, it will be a great fortune. Chapter 503. They didn't dare to touch this tribulation, nor could they resist it. However, regardless of whether the tribulation was a success or failure, it was a great opportunity for them. Rumble, in the distant sky, thunderclouds surged wildly. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Bolts of lightning fell like angry pythons. At this time, the entire morning was dark. Only the dazzling lightning and thunder filled everything. It was like the end of the world. Bolts of lightning shot out from the thunderclouds like silver pythons. Then, they tore through the space and descended with terrifying sounds. In the distant void, a multicolored light spread. A 5-colored elk quietly floated in the air, looking at the distant lightning. Its eyes flickered, but it didn't dare to get close. It should be over soon. Whether it succeeds or fails, we'll know the result soon. In the distance, many shocked gazes also surged with a hint of passion. On the mountain peak, bolts of lightning fell continuously. The blood jasper spirit ginseng's body was surrounded by electric arcs, and there were also many scattered lightning bolts that fell on the ground and mountains around, destroying everything. The mountain rocks collapsed, and cracks covered the mountain and the ground. Thunder rumbled endlessly. Rumble. The surrounding mountains were also enveloped. Mountains collapsed and the ground cracked. The earth shook and rocks fell in torrents. The scene was extremely terrifying. The strange thing was that the mountain peak where the lightning was the densest was densely covered in lightning. It was like an indestructible boulder. No one saw that although lightning fell, it seemed to have intelligence and didn't fall around the mountain peak at all. Grandpa Ginseng, you must hold on. In the mysterious space, Sui had no way of knowing the situation outside. He could only pray that the blood jasper spirit ginseng could successfully pass the tribulation. Can the blood jasper spirit ginseng pass the tribulation successfully? It's said that tribulations aren't easy to pass. The blood jasper spirit ginseng can already speak, so it should have passed the initial tribulation. If it passes the tribulation successfully, it will be a demonic emperor. Situ Muyang said softly to himself. He was shocked. Demonic emperor was an absolute powerhouse in this world. Initial tribulation. Grandpa Ginseng failed the previous tribulation. This is another tribulation, Su-yi told Situ Muyang. What is tribulation? Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the others were puzzled. They had no idea what was going on outside. With their status, there were many things that they didn't know. They couldn't come into contact with people of that level. When heaven and earth spiritual beings and savage demonic beasts reach the demonic illusionary realm, they will be obstructed by tribulations. If they can withstand it, they will exist in this world. If they can't, they will vanish into thin air. There were many kinds of tribulations, and it was said that each kind was stronger than the last. The cardinal tribulation was only the first tribulation for savage beasts and spiritual beings to step into the ethereal demon realm. After stepping into the ethereal demon realm, they would receive the protection of the heavens and earth, and would be able to speak the human language. Only 1 out of 100 savage beasts and spiritual beings of heaven and earth would be able to successfully pass the trial. If they fail, their cultivation would regress, and it would be extremely difficult for them to advance any further. In the worst case, they would be severely injured or even turned into ashes, Situ Muyang informed Zhang Qing and Su Jiahui. He knew far more than them. If that's the case, savage demonic beasts and spiritual beings of heaven and earth have a much harder time cultivating than us humans. Hearing that, Zhang Qing and the others secretly clicked their tongues. They didn't expect that those seemingly powerful savage demonic beasts and spiritual beings of heaven and earth would have to face tribulations obstructing their path of cultivation. They were extremely dangerous and difficult to pass. You are overthinking things. Be it humans, savage beasts, or spiritual beings of heaven and earth, cultivation is a heaven-defying path. In the end, they will all be obstructed by tribulations. It's just that the tribulations that human warriors need to transcend are still too early for us. If we can take that step one day, we will naturally know the tribulations we need to transcend. Situ Muyang said with a yearning look in his eyes. If he could reach the step of transcending tribulations, it would prove that he could become a top expert. Is that so? Su-yi was a little puzzled. It was just transcending tribulations. When he cultivated the heavenly Fei ancient scripture, he had attracted a tribulation. That lightning seemed to be much stronger than Grandpa Ginseng's tribulation. Chi-la, at that moment, the space fluctuated. A figure of light rushed in and smashed into the ground where the medicinal herbs were planted. At the same time, an excited voice that could not be concealed sounded. The tribulation is over. I need a few days to recover. Kid, leave quickly. Don't attract attention. It's a success. When the voice entered his ears, Su-yi was overjoyed. He immediately waved his sleeve and said, "Let's go. Quick." On the distant mountain peak, the shocking lightning slowly disappeared, and the thunderclouds dispersed. Did he succeed or fail? Everyone's eyes were filled with lingering fear. Whoosh whoosh, at the same time, many figures rushed out. The energy under their feet transformed into beast shadows and rushed up in search of the great opportunity. You, cool craftsman, premier Xinjiang Gate. The mountains were majestic, covered in lush greenery. Clouds and mist lingered around them, spreading out in a spectacular sight. In the early morning, the majestic mountains were faintly discernible in the clouds. Ancient trees towered into the sky, and red walls and yellow tiles were revealed among the lush greenery. The energy of heaven and earth was abundant everywhere. Vaguely, there seemed to be the sound of guqin and the tinkling of bells, making one feel as if they were in a fairyland. The 36th Sword Peak was cold and cheerless. A short figure landed on the 36th Sword Peak. Although the figure was short, his face was slightly old. He seemed to be in his 60s or 70s. There were faint wrinkles on his face, as if they were traces left behind by the passage of time. However, the outline of his face was very three-dimensional. One could vaguely see that he must have been quite handsome when he was young. However, the figure was too short, like a child of 8 or 9 years old. He was only half the height of an ordinary person. The short old man's long robe fit him extremely well. A third of his black hair was mixed with white hair. His gaze moved slightly, calm and deep, like an ancient well without ripples. He murmured softly, "The exit of the battlefield of myriad swords should be open." As his voice fell, the old man did not seem to have any intention of going to the exit. He walked into the courtyard. After all, the Myriad Sword Conference had nothing to do with the 36th Sword Peak. The exit of the battlefield of 10,000 swords was in a vast square surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. Whoosh whoosh, early in the morning, there were older disciples of Xinjiang Gate who came to set up and wait. Then, there were protectors who came. Figures with powerful auras landed one after another. Each protector's eyes were filled with anticipation and expectation. For the protectors of Xinjiang Gate, everyone knew that this Myriad Sword Conference was not only about Xinjiang Gate, but also related to the future of the entire Xinjiang Gate. In addition, many of these protectors had their own interests at stake. Chapter 504. It's almost time. I wonder if Protector Ho has prepared all the pills for his loss. Ha 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 ha! Protector Wang Tianbao couldn't help but laugh in the crowd. He had finally tricked Ho Changming, who told him to act all high and mighty. He would be heartbroken later. I heard that Protector Ho went to exchange for pills a few days ago. Could it be that he doesn't have confidence in himself and knows that he is going to lose? A protector who looked to be in his 50s also joked. He had also placed a bet. Although the odds were very low, this was equivalent to winning a bet. He didn't want to miss out. Winning some pills for his disciple wasn't a bad idea either. It's not the end yet. If you win, you will get your share of the pills. Protector Ho Changming spoke. How could he not know that his new disciple appeared to have ordinary talent, and was originally only an outer disciple? If it wasn't a miracle among miracles, even he himself would not believe that his new disciple was able to stand out from thousands of inner disciples in the myriad sword battlefield and enter the top 68. Protector Ho Changming ran to the side as soon as he finished speaking. He couldn't be bothered to stay with these people. Protector Ho Changming had taken out all his assets and exchanged them for all kinds of high-tier pills. He was almost in debt. However, he couldn't take back what he had said. After all, Lin Fan was his new disciple. The worst-case scenario was that Lin Fan could come out of the myriad sword battlefield safely. Thank you in advance, Protector Ho. Haha. Protector Zhu Chonggao and the others laughed. They could tell that Protector Ho Changming was stubborn. However, the protectors didn't continue to stare at Protector Ho Changming. The exit would open soon and the personal disciples and inner disciples would come out. This myriad sword conference was more important than the previous ones. I wonder which disciples got the mystical spiritual fruit this time? Treasures like the mystical spirit fruit were hard to come by. Coincidentally, the mystical spirit fruit that could only be harvested once every 15 years had been found by this group of disciples. It was also a stroke of luck, and no one knew which disciples would be able to obtain it. Those who can get the mystical spiritual fruit are probably those guys. A protector estimated that those who could get the mystical spiritual fruit were those who ranked high in the sword pagoda. The others couldn't compete with them. I wonder if there will be any dark horses this time? A beautiful middle-aged woman spoke. Every myriad sword conference was, in fact, a special test for all the disciples. Often, there would be some ordinary disciples who would appear out of nowhere and perform amazingly. I look forward to it. Some of the protectors were also looking forward to it. Every time the myriad sword conference was held, there would always be some disciples who would suddenly perform amazingly. I wonder if everyone still remembers Su Yi. Suddenly, a faint voice sounded from among the protectors. Su Yi, that Su Yi from the 36th Sword Peak? Su Yi, that disciple seems to be an unforeseen event. I wonder where Elder Su brought him back. Hearing Su Yi's name, all the guardians were secretly moved. Su Yi's performance was too amazing. Although they didn't know if the heaven-reaching platform had malfunctioned, it was enough to shock everyone. Although the heaven-reaching platform has malfunctioned, Su Yi was able to defeat the 11th sword. It has already proven that he is extraordinary. This time, it shouldn't be a problem for him to enter the top 68. A protector said. Even if the heaven-reaching platform had malfunctioned, Su Yi could only reach the 7th level. However, Su Yi's victory over the 11th sword was real. With such cultivation strength, it shouldn't be a problem for him to enter the top 68 with enough sword pattern stones. Look at main 3 chapter equals section on G#. If Su Yi can enter the top 68, it will be the first time in 100 years that a disciple from the 36th Sword Peak has entered the top 68 in the Myriad Sword Conference. A protector said. Hearing this, the protectors smiled knowingly. In the past 100 years, the Myriad Sword Conference had never seemed to have anything to do with the 36th Sword Peak. That's not necessarily true. Su Yi seems to have offended many disciples, especially those from the 15th Sword Peak. I don't know what will happen when he enters the Myriad Sword battlefield. A protector said faintly. The 15th Sword Peak, suddenly, many protectors' expressions changed. The news that Su Yi had defeated many disciples from the 15th Sword Peak had already spread. And everyone knew that the 15th Sword Peak had a personal disciple who was not to be trifled with. They were all young people. Young people were hot-blooded and competitive. They would definitely clash in the Myriad Sword battlefield. Whoosh whoosh, above the void there was an aura fluctuation. Many figures descended. Waves of invisible aura fluctuations caused the entire space to quietly freeze. Greetings, elders. Everyone bowed and the protectors looked respectful. It was a group of elders. This myriad sword conference was more significant than usual in Xinjiang Gate, and the Xinjiang Gate attached great importance to it. Many elders descended, and there were many familiar figures among them. Elder Yu Chongqing, Elder Lu Baimei, Elder Mei Huaya, Elder Duan Yuerong, Elder Shangguan Hu, and the others were among them. The group of elders descended and looked at the area between the mountain streams in front of the square. That was the place where the exit would open. This myriad sword conference was extraordinary. I hope everything will go smoothly, Elder Yu Chongqing said. His thin cheeks were full of wrinkles, as if he had experienced the vicissitudes of life. His long eyebrows and white beard fluttered behind him, giving him a somewhat sage-like temperament. But at this moment, Elder Yu Chongqing's face was full of nervousness. Every time in the myriad sword battlefield there would be accident. It wasn't a strange thing for a personal disciple to die in the process. Elder Yu Chongqing also had disciples in there, and he hoped that no accidents would happen in the myriad sword battlefield. Open the exit, Elder Lu Baimei said. His black hair was tied up in a bun, and there wasn't a single strand of hair out of place. Under his silver eyebrows, his slightly sunken eye sockets revealed his deep brown eyes. It was obvious that he was quite nervous. The continuous mountain range was like a giant dragon circling. Boom! Suddenly, there was a rumble between the mountain range, followed by a tremor that shook the entire myriad sword battlefield. A ray of light rushed out like a sun, and a huge spatial portal appeared. The spatial portal is open. Several figures rushed out quickly. Looking at the space transfer gate that appeared, a smile appeared on their faces. These people were none other than Su Yi, Situ Muyang, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the others. Just in time. Ha 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 ha, let's go out. Chapter 505. However, these were only outer court disciples. There were no inner court disciples. Situ Muyang reckoned that those inner court disciples and direct disciples had all been cheated by Su Yi. Take these space bags. There are some gains from the battlefield of 10,000 swords and sword pattern stones inside. Whether you can be qualified to ascend the spiritual sword peak in the end will depend on yourselves. In front of the space portal, Su Yi's figure paused. He took out a lot of space bags and handed them to Situ Muyang, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the others. So many sword pattern stones. And, damn, I'm rich. Situ Muyang immediately took the space bags and checked them. These space bags had no obstacles and could be opened directly. He was stunned and wild with joy. 45 sword pattern stones, a lot of elixirs and other cultivation resources. Several space bags were piled up. Although Situ Muyang had seen good things since he was young, these were the gains from the battlefield of 10,000 swords. They represented his achievements in the battlefield of 10,000 sword. The quality was different. Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the others did not even have space bags with them. They had seen space bags before, but at this moment, they were a little unfamiliar with opening them. However, in the end, they opened them smoothly. So many seeing everything in the space bags, compared to Situ Muyang, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, Tan Chao, and Wang Fan were even more shocked at this moment. In the space bags that Su Yi gave to Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the others, there were more than 10 sword pattern stones each. As for whether they could enter the top 68, they could only wait and see. Su Yi also knew that although Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Wang Fan, and the others' cultivation had skyrocketed and their bones and marrow had been cleansed, their true strength was far from enough to fight in the final battle of the Myriad Sword Conference. Su Yi had given them the sword pattern stones so that they could perform well at the Myriad Sword Conference. At that time, if Su Jiahui and the others could catch the eye of some elders, it would be beneficial for them as well. Moreover, the sword pattern stone had an important use and could be exchanged for point. Su-yi had given quite a bit of everything he had obtained from the myriad sword battlefield to Su Jiahui and the others. With these cultivation resources, it was enough for Su Jiahui and the others to cultivate in peace. "Come on, let's get out of here first," Su-yi spoke. Zhang Qing, Su Jiahui, and the others weren't that fast. The teleportation gate had already been opened, and the personal disciples would immediately catch up to them. "Come on, let's get out of here first." Situ Muyang kept the interspatial bag. Under the astonished gazes of many people around them, the group walked directly into the portal. "Isn't that Su-yi? It's him, it can't be wrong." "Is that Situ Muyang next to him? Didn't everyone go to surround them? Why did they come to the exit? Could that terrifying scene just now have something to do with Su-yi?" Many outer sect disciples were stunned. Tens of thousands of disciples, and all the personal disciples couldn't even surround two people? At the Xinjian Gate, on the square surrounded by mountains on three sides, a teleportation gate opened. Rumble, the void fluctuated, and a dazzling light distorted the void. Waves of aura spread out. There were many disciples, protectors, and elders of the Xinjian Gate around. At this moment, all of them were looking at the exit of the teleportation gate with anticipation in their eyes. There were many people present, and they were all disciples of the 36th Sword Peak. Although the Myriad Sword Conference was the Myriad Sword Conference of the entire Xinjian Gate, there were also competitions among the various sword peaks of the Xinjian Gate. Of course, in reality, everyone only thought that the 35 sword peaks were secretly competing. This was because the 36th Sword Peak had always been included in the calculations. "I wonder who will be the first to come out this time? It should be Ryugan River, Yun Lingfeng, and those terrifying guys. I wonder who will have the most sword pattern stones." Many disciples were discussing, and even some protectors were whispering to each other. Everyone was guessing which disciple would be the first to come out, and which disciple would have the most sword pattern stones. To a certain extent, the first disciple to come out could also represent his strength. The strongest disciple was more likely to have the most sword pattern stones. In the myriad sword battlefield, those disciples might have already clashed with each other. "There should be some dark horses emerging," someone said softly. According to the situation of the previous myriad sword conferences, there would be fierce battles for the sword pattern stones in the competition for all kinds of opportunities and creations, and even before the exit opened. It should be known that the age of the personal disciples was also at the peak of their youth. They were usually unconvinced, and it was inevitable that they would clash with each other. However, at this moment, if these people knew that in this myriad sword conference, there would not be any fights for the sword pattern stones, let alone the various opportunities. Everyone was swarming around Su-yi, looking for Su-yi from head to toe. One could only wonder what they would think. Protector Ho Changming stood alone at the side. He seemed to be careless, but in fact, his eyes were intentionally or unintentionally glancing at the exit of the space portal. He was secretly nervous. "Look, someone is coming out." Finally, a figure appeared in the space portal. Suddenly, all eyes were on the exit. For no reason, some people began to feel nervous. Deep in their hearts, everyone naturally hoped that the first to come out would be the disciple from their sword peak. Swoosh, swoosh, under the expectant gazes, several figures appeared at the exit of the space portal. It was as if they were being chased by something, and all of them appeared in a hurry. The figures were blurry, but they soon got closer and clearer. Cool, English, English, English under the expectant gazes. The first to come out was obviously not the person that everyone was expecting. It was not even one of those extraordinary figures that everyone was familiar with. To everyone's eyes, the first few figures that came out seemed to be unfamiliar. It seems to be Su-yi. Elder Yu Chongqing's thin and wrinkled face was a little surprised. He recognized the figure at the very front. The symbol was very eye-catching. "It's Su-yi, that kid. Elder Shangwan, whose eyes moved. His obsidian-like black pupils flashed with an awe-inspiring heroic aura. His sharp eyes reflected the several figures. How could he not recognize that brat? Sui, it's that Sui. This guy is actually the first to come out. There are a few unfamiliar people. They seem to be outer disciples. When they saw the figure of the leading young man, everyone was surprised. Chapter 506. Who else could it be other than Sui with a sword and a saber on his back? No one had expected that Sui would be the first to run out of the exit. What was even more unexpected was that there were actually a few outer court disciples who were the first to walk out of the exit. In particular, many people were still guessing what would happen to Sui in the myriad sword battlefield. There would definitely be people who would not let Sui off. But now, Sui was the first to run out of the spatial portal. Although his clothes were tattered and his hair was disheveled, he seemed to be completely fine and seemed to be in high spirits. The entire place was stunned and the atmosphere was very strange. But at this moment, someone's eyes suddenly lit up. Cool. Craftsman VNet 9P Yong HGZ equals free look backslash little 0 say equals protector Ho Changming intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the exit. When he saw a familiar figure among the several figures that walked out, his gaze immediately locked onto that figure. Immediately, Ho Changming's eyes moved inwardly. That figure was the new disciple he had casually accepted in the myriad sword battlefield. At this moment, his disciple was actually the first to walk out of the exit. The group of elders were all secretly moved. Among the group of elders, an old man who looked to be in his 60s and had a medium build looked at the numerous figures walking out of the exit. His expression was somewhat indifferent, and a light flashed in his eyes. There seems to be that little fellow as well. Why is he walking together with Sui? Strange, that little fellow is actually walking together with that brat Sui. Among the group of elders, some of the elders' gazes landed on Situmuyang, and their expressions were rather strange. We're out, ha! When he stepped out of the spatial portal, Situmuyang was extremely excited. Once he walked out of the spatial portal, he would be completely out of the myriad sword battlefield. Even if all the direct disciples caught up, they would not be able to do anything to them. Walking out of the teleportation gate, Sui glanced around and saw many familiar figures. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. With this, not only did Sui no longer have to worry about being surrounded by his personal disciples, more importantly, he actually managed to bring out the Xianyang Golden Demon Falcon and the Wolf Bat from the mysterious space in his mind. Are we the first to come out? Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Wang Fan, and the others were also very happy. They looked around as if they were still in a daze. After spending a month in the myriad sword battlefield, they could be considered to have safely exited. As for the mysterious space, Su Jiahui and the others had no idea how exciting it was when Sui and Situmuyang were besieged by tens of thousands of disciples of Xinjian Gate. Just how shocking was the lightning brought about by the first tribulation? There seems to be something wrong with the atmosphere. Is no one welcoming us? Situmuyang pursed her lips. She felt that there was something wrong with the atmosphere, but she could not tell what it was. A group of outer sect disciples. Which sword peak are they from? These outer sect disciples seem to have a good relationship with Sui. Are they all from the 36th sword peak? On the various sword peaks, some of the older disciples of Xinjian Gate were secretly discussing. A group of outer sect disciples actually took the lead and walked out. They had all entered the myriad sword battlefield before and knew that there were many fights at the exit. The top disciples of the Sword Pagoda would all fight. It was absolutely impossible for outer sect disciples to take the lead and walk out. Outer sect disciples did not have the courage to do so. Boss Sui, I saw my master. I'll go see him first. While Zhang Qing was looking around excitedly, he saw Protector Ho Changming, who was not too far away. That was his master. Zhang Qing wanted to pay him a visit. "It's my duty. Go ahead." Su Yi also saw Protector Ho Changming and had a good impression of this protector. Zhang Qing was very excited. He had become Guardian Ho's disciple and gained a lot in the Myriad Sword battlefield. He was definitely the happiest person in the past 20 years. Disciple Zhang Qing pays his respects to Master. Zhang Qing took 2 steps and walked to Guardian Ho Changming. He knelt down respectfully and saluted. It's Guardian Ho Changming's disciple." Everyone was astonished. At this moment, when Zhang Qing bowed in front of Ho Changming, it naturally attracted a lot of attention and made people feel astonished. "Is that Guardian Ho's disciple? He seems to be, ordinary." Guardian Wang Tianbao, Guardian Zhu Changgao, and the others were even more surprised. It turned out that Zhang Qing was Guardian Ho Changming's disciple in the Myriad Sword battlefield. He looked ordinary and did not seem to be eye-catching. However, they were envious of his disciple because he was the first to walk out of the spatial portal. He seems to be extraordinary. However, the Guardians' eyes were sharp. When their gazes were focused on Zhang Qing's body, they felt that this ordinary-looking disciple seemed to have an unusual temperament. Protector Ho Changming watched as his disciple walked out of the spatial portal first. Not only did this make him feel relieved, but it also made him, the master, stand in the limelight unknowingly. He was already very satisfied in his heart. A Guardian Ho Changming also noticed that his new disciple's aura had obviously reached the Yuan Profound Realm. He seemed to have reached the 4th level of the Yuan Profound Realm. One must know that a month ago, his disciple was only at the Yuan Soul Realm and was still far from the Yuan Profound Realm. This meant that Zhang Qing's cultivation had increased by an entire realm in a month's time. How terrifying was this? No one would believe it if he told it to others. More importantly, Guardian Ho Changming felt that his disciple's aura and temperament were completely different from a month ago. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. A month ago, the feeling that this disciple gave him was that he was ordinary, and there was nothing outstanding about him. However, at this moment, this disciple seemed to be ordinary. But when he looked at him carefully, his eyes lit up. His eyes, muscles, bones, and formless aura seemed to have undergone a metamorphosis. It was as if his bones and marrow had been cleansed. "So, this is Guardian Ho's new disciple." A figure stepped forward. Many guardians walked over and their gazes fell on Zhang Qing. After all, they had already placed their bet. Even if they won, they would not win much. It was only 10 celestial high-tier elixir pills. For their status, it was not a big deal. However, it was rare to see Guardian Ho Changming suffer. Such an opportunity was rare. The Guardians' gazes fell on Zhang Qing as they were secretly moved. They couldn't deny that Ho Changming's new disciple didn't look impressive, but he shouldn't be simple. For an outer sect disciple to have such an aura, it gave off an unknowingly extraordinary aura. "Get up!" Chapter 507. Yes, Master. Zhang Qing stood up and looked at the group of protectors. He immediately bowed and said, "Disciple Zhang Qing greets the protectors." After cleansing his bones and marrow and refining his body with the mysterious space spirit liquid, Zhang Qing had transformed from the inside out. His attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. He was respectful but fearless. Looking at his disciple's performance, Ho Changming smiled inwardly. He liked him more and more. Judging from the performance of this new disciple, Ho Changming felt that he had gained something else from losing the elixir today. In the future, this disciple might really have some achievement. K5 Most DJ New Q Chapter Q, Part C. The group of protectors looked at Zhang Qing, and they were all secretly moved. Could such a disciple really be an outer sect disciple? Why didn't anyone notice him? Okay, Zhang Qing, how many sword pattern stones did you get in the battlefield of 10,000 swords? Wang Tianbao stepped forward. This was what he was most concerned about. It seemed that Ho Changming had indeed accepted a good disciple, but he had definitely lost the bet. How could an outer sect disciple have sword pattern stones? Even if he had accidentally obtained them, with the strength of an outer sect disciple, they would have been taken away by the inner sect disciples and direct disciples. Seeing that a protector was asking, Zhang Qing immediately looked at Ho Changming nervously. After all, the sword pattern stones he had were all given to him by boss Su Yi. If he relied on himself, he wouldn't be able to walk out of the battlefield of 10,000 swords. Seeing Zhang Qing's reaction, the protectors smiled inwardly. They thought that Zhang Qing was nervous because he didn't have a single sword pattern stone. They had already won. Moreover, they knew from the beginning that Ho Changming was definitely going to lose. Seeing Zhang Qing's reaction, Ho Changming felt helpless. How could an outer sect disciple have a sword pattern stone? Fortunately, they had lost the bet. At least this disciple seemed to be good. Ho Changming said indifferently, "If you have one, just tell the protectors. If you don't, it doesn't matter. The tempering of the battlefield of 10,000 swords is meant to be of great benefit to you in the future." Hearing Ho Changming's words, many protectors laughed inwardly. It seemed that Ho Changming couldn't take it anymore. Zhang Qing looked at his master's expression and gritted his teeth. He summoned his courage and took out a space bag. He took out a large number of sword pattern stones and said bravely, "Master, disciple is incompetent. I only obtained 13 sword pattern stones." Numerous gazes landed on Zhang Qing's palm. Suddenly, their expressions changed drastically. The expressions on the protectors' faces were as if they were choking on something hard to swallow. Protector Ho Changming originally had a look of hopelessness on his face. When he looked at the sword-grain stone in Zhang Qing's hand, he was stunned for a few breaths. Only then did he react. His old face suddenly surged with uncontrollable joy. "Are these sword pattern stones real?" Zhu Chonggao stepped forward. His expression changed. He took a sword pattern stone from Zhang Qing's hand and began to examine it. He couldn't believe that an outer sect disciple had obtained 13 sword pattern stones. Zhu Chonggao's expression froze when he held the sword pattern stone in his hand. The sword pattern stone couldn't be fake. This outer sect disciple called Zhang Qing really obtained 13 sword pattern stones. Looking at the expression on Zhu Zhonggao's face, the group of protectors at the side already knew what was going on. Moreover, the sword pattern stone was unlikely to be fake. 13 sword pattern stones. How can you say that disciple is incompetent? Who are you trying to insult? Numerous strange gazes once again landed on Zhang Qing's body. They had no choice but to re-evaluate this seemingly ordinary outer court disciple. All the protectors knew that according to the previous myriad sword conferences, 13 sword pattern stones was enough to get into the top 68. There were no more than 300 or 400 sword pattern stones in the entire myriad sword battlefield. There were thousands of direct disciples. Even if each of them got a sword pattern stone, only 300 or 400 of them would get one. In the previous myriad sword conferences, the disciple who ranked first would get at most 20 sword pattern stones. It was difficult to get more than 30 sword pattern stones. The disciples who got the same number of sword pattern stones would be ranked according to the time they left the teleportation gate. With 13 sword pattern stones, there was at least an 80% chance of getting into the top 68. Good, good, good. Protector Ho Changming laughed. His laughter was very heroic. He was originally silent, but in an instant, he became heroic. He waved his sleeves and immediately said to Zhang Qing, "Quickly go to the front and count the sword pattern stones. Master is very happy, very happy." "Yes, Master." Zhang Qing heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that there was no problem. he immediately left and retreated. Those who came out of the myriad sword battlefield, come and count the sword pattern stones. The deacons and senior disciples of the Xinjiang Gate urged Su Yi and the others to count the sword pattern stones and register the rankings. Of course, other than Su Yi, no one would really think that Su Jiahui and the other outer court disciples would have a sword vein stone with them based on their attire. However, when Su Jiahui, Su Yi, and the others took out their sword pattern stones and counted them, the senior disciples and deacons were dumbfounded. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Outer disciple of the 36th Sword Peak, Su Jiahui, 15 sword pattern stones. Outer disciple of the 36th Sword Peak, Wang Fan, 10 sword pattern stones. Outer disciple of the 36th Sword Peak, Lu Ji, 11 sword pattern stones. Outer disciple of the 36th Sword Peak, Tan Chao, 11 sword pattern stones. Outer disciple of the 36th Sword Peak, Zhang Qing, 13 sword pattern stones. When these voices spread out, the gazes of the people in the crowd changed. They were all from the 36th Sword Peak, and they were all outer disciples of the 36th Sword Peak. However, each of them had more than 10 sword pattern stones. Even the group of elders was moved. In an instant, many obscure auras fell directly on Su Jiahui, Wang Fan, and the others. "What's your name? Where's your badge?" It was Situ Muyang's turn. Looking at the unusually young boy in front of them, the deacons and senior disciples were a little surprised. Moreover, counting the sword pattern stones required the Xinjiang Gate's badge. The sword pattern stones could be added to the badge directly. "My name is Situ Muyang. I don't have a badge yet. Count me in the 36th Sword Peak." Situ Muyang chuckled and took out his interspatial bag. Although he was the son of the sect leader, he had not been in the Xinjiang Gate since he was young, and he had no status in the Xinjiang Gate. Chapter 508. This, the deacons and senior disciples of the Xinjiang Gate, who had not recovered from their shock, were stunned. They did not expect such a disciple to exist. Register him first. He is a disciple of the Xinjiang Gate. Count him in the 36th Sword Peak. Elder Duan Yurong walked over and nodded at Situ Muyang. "Greetings, Elder." Situ Muyang seemed to be familiar with Elder Duan Yurong and bowed slightly. Elder Duan Yurong nodded in acknowledgement. Then, she looked at Su Jiahui and sized her up carefully. "Come, let's count them." Situ Muyang smiled and took out a few sword pattern stones from his interspatial bag. He placed them in front of the deacon who was in charge of counting the sword pattern stones. This, the surrounding people could not help but be shocked. Situ Muyang, outer disciple of the 36th Sword Peak, 45 sword pattern stones. The deacon's voice was obviously not normal. "What, 45 sword pattern stones? How can there be so many?" The elders could not help but change their expressions. Although almost all of the elders knew Situ Muyang's identity and background, 45 sword pattern stones still shocked them. He. Situ Muyang was very satisfied. As far as he knew, 45 sword pattern stones were definitely a lot. He then looked at Su Yi with admiration. So many sword pattern stones were the result of their concerted efforts and tacit cooperation. Su Yi looked around and saw the expressions of the guardians and elders. Everything was as he had expected. Wang Fan and the others had attracted the attention of the elders and guardians. First. It was Su Yi's turn. He walked forward and took out the sword pattern stones from his interspatial bag. Su Yi, outer disciple of the 36th Sword Peak, 50 sword pattern stones. The voice of the deacon who announced the result was trembling. When the deacon announced the result, all eyes were fixed on Su Yi. Many people secretly sucked in a breath of cold air and smacked their lips. 45, 50. They looked at Su Yi, Situ Muyang, and the others as if they had seen something incredible, 45, 50, 15, 13. They are all outer disciples of the 36th sword peak. The sword pattern stones they have occupy half of the sword pattern stones in the entire battlefield of 10,000 swords. They are all outer disciples of the 36th sword peak. Just the few of them have already occupied half of the sword pattern stone. Many people smacked their lips. The group of elders frowned. Su-yi and the other outer disciples had already obtained so many sword vein stones. One could only imagine how many sword vein stones the others had. Moreover, they all had personal disciples in the myriad sword battlefield. They couldn't help but worry for their disciples. The 36th sword peak is a little special this time. The first few disciples who came out not only had sword vein stones, but they were also from the 36th sword peak. Some of them were even outer sect disciples of the 36th sword peak. Little girl, how about I take you in as my personal disciple? Elder Duan Yuerong quietly came to Su Jiahui's side. Her eyes were still filled with uncontrollable shock. How could Elder Duan Yuerong not feel the aura on Su Jiahui's body? A 16-year-old girl with a cultivation of the 5th level of the Yuan profound realm. What kind of talent was that? When Yun Lingfeng, Ryugan River, and the others came to Xinjian Gate, they were far from reaching this stage. Haha, little girl, not bad. Why don't you join the 28th sword peak and become my personal disciple? Little girl, come to the 17th sword peak. You will inherit my legacy. Come to the 19th sword peak, little girl. Following Elder Duan Yuerong's words, a large group of elders in the surroundings rushed over. Elder Duan Yuerong's actions could not escape their eyes. How could Yu Chongqing, Mei Huaye, Lu Baimei, and the other elders not see Su Jiahui's potential? They had been secretly watching her for a long time. They all wanted to accept this disciple who had made a mistake. Su Jiahui was stunned. She did not expect a group of elders to surround her. Under the invisible aura, she could not help but feel nervous. She could not help but move closer to Su-yi. Su Jiahui, is your father Su Qingyu? An elder stepped forward. His face was deep and handsome. He must have been a handsome man when he was young. He had a dignified temperament. He was Elder Shangguan Hu. Elder, my father is Su Qingyu. Su Jiahui was surprised. This was a dignified disciplinary hall elder. How could he know her father? If I remember correctly, your father used to be an outer disciple of Xinjian Gate, right? Elder Shangguan Hu looked at Su Jiahui. His dignified face showed a smile to Su Jiahui. Yes. Su Jiahui was very nervous. Being in such close contact with an elder of the disciplinary hall, not to mention that she was surrounded by elders. The invisible aura was enough to make her tremble. Back then, before I came to the disciplinary hall, your father was an outer disciple of my sword peak. Originally, he had a high chance of becoming an inner disciple, or even a direct disciple, but unfortunately, he violated the rules of the sect and lost his chance. I'm afraid that your father spent a lot of effort to send you to the Divine Sword sect, which is enough to prove your father's feelings for the Divine Sword sect. Elder Shangguan, who was a little regretful. He then looked at Su Jiahui with a touch of gentleness in his eyes. He continued, however, your father gave birth to such a good daughter. How about this, you become my direct disciple? It can be considered as fulfilling one of your father's wishes. Elder Shangguan, are you trying to use the emotional card to snatch her away? Elder Duan Yuerong rolled her eyes and stared at Shangguan Hu. This guy was obviously trying to use the emotional card to snatch her away. She couldn't help but regret not accepting this little girl as a direct disciple on the 36th sword peak. Now that she thought about it, she couldn't help but regret it. Many elders originally wanted to go up and fight for her. This little girl was extraordinary and had amazing talent. If they could take her as their disciple, it wouldn't take many years for her to be on the same level as the flowing cloud river and Yunling Feng. However, when they saw Elder Shangguan Hu interfering, all the elders present sighed regretfully. It seemed that Elder Shangguan Hu was going to get a big bargain this time. Elder Duan, I didn't mean that. Let the little girl choose for herself. Chapter 509. Su Jiahui was nervous. Not only did she look at Su Yi, but her body also subconsciously leaned closer to Su Yi. At this moment, Su Jiahui's heart was indeed a little complicated. She knew that her father's dream was to one day make her an inner disciple of the Xinjian Gate. He even hoped that she would be a direct disciple. If she became his disciple now, it would be considered as fulfilling her father's wish. Choose for yourself, Su Yi whispered in Su Jiahui's ear. He did not expect so many elders to fight for a disciple. However, thinking about Su Jiahui's extraordinary performance, Su Yi also knew in his heart. Moreover, Su Yi also hoped that Su Jiahui, Lu Ji, and the others could receive more attention from the elders and protectors. Su Jiahui composed herself and hesitated for a moment. Then, she bowed to the surrounding elders and said, "Thank you for your kindness, elders. I will still be a disciple of the 36th Sword Peak. I will make a decision after I report to Elder Su when he returns." Hearing this, Elder Shangguan Hu frowned and felt helpless. Elder Duan Yuerong was secretly moved. This girl had rejected her in the same way last time. All the elders were also quite surprised. If it was any other outer disciple, the elders would fight to be the first to accept her as a direct disciple. They would be overwhelmed by the favor. Someone else is coming out. The difference in time is too long. Did something happen over there? It seems to be some outer disciples. Finally, someone else appeared from the space portal. However, as more and more figures walked out, they were all outer disciples. This made everyone somewhat puzzled. The elders' and protectors' gazes finally fell on the exit of the space portal. When they saw that it was another outer disciple coming out, they were puzzled. Situ Muyang and Su Yi looked at each other and secretly smiled. The people who came out of the portal were naturally the outer disciples. It should be known that the direct disciples and inner disciples would not be able to reach the portal in such a short time. More and more personal disciples walked out. Those who were able to walk out of the teleportation gate were also quite happy. However, the faces of the elders and protectors grew increasingly solemn. Over 1,000 outer sect disciples had walked out, but not a single personal disciple or inner sect disciple could be seen. How could they not be nervous? Where are the direct disciples and inner disciples? Did something happen inside? An elder stepped forward and asked the outer disciple, who had just exited the battlefield of 10,000 swords. "Elder, have all the direct disciples, inner disciples, and senior brothers and sisters gone to hunt down Su Yi and Situ Muyang?" Facing the elder, the outer sect disciples were very nervous. They looked at Su Yi and Situ Muyang, who were also in the square. Their eyes flashed as they reported to the elder. Hunting down Su Yi and Situ Muyang. Hearing this, the elders and protectors present were secretly surprised. They could not help but look at Su Yi and Situ Muyang. Hunting down these two guys? Could it be that all the direct disciples and inner sect disciples went to hunt down Su Yi and Situ Muyang? If that was the case, why did Su Yi and Situ Muyang come out first? What exactly happened? Tell me in detail. The elder asked, wanting to know the details. Several outer sect disciples reported the general situation while trembling with fear. The general idea was that Su Yi and Situ Muyang had obtained all the mystical spirit fruits, and that Su Yi and Situ Muyang had plundered all the inner sect disciples' space bags. Many personal disciples had been robbed by Su Yi and Situ Muyang. In the end, all the direct disciples and outer sect disciples went to hunt down Su Yi and Situ Muyang, but for some reason, Su Yi and Situ Muyang were the first to exit the teleportation gate. You're saying that all the direct disciples and outer sect disciples went to hunt down Su-yi and Situmuyang? Some elders could not believe it. A few thousand direct disciples and so many inner sect disciples. What kind of formation was that to hunt down Situmuyang and Su-yi? But looking at the current situation, Situmuyang and Su-yi were completely fine. Many outer sect disciples nodded their heads in affirmation. It was true that all the direct disciples and inner sect disciples had gone to hunt down Su-yi and Situmuyang. They were also wondering why Su-yi and Situmuyang were the first to exit the battlefield of 10,000 swords. What? When they found out about this, everyone's gazes instantly landed on Su-yi and Situmuyang as though they had been electrocuted. A direct disciple came out. It's Gu Qinyu. And the 11th sword, Nan Lilan. Zhang Lingyun, Gong Qi, Sakura Asaka. At the same time, many voices were heard in the square. The figures of the direct disciples finally appeared in the space portal. Swoosh, swoosh, one by one, extraordinary young figures flew out of the space portal. They were the direct disciples with extraordinary auras. Swoosh, swoosh, more and more direct disciples poured out of the space portal. The people at the front were the ones who ranked at the top of the sword pagodas. When the direct disciples walked out of the space portal, their eyes immediately scanned the crowd as if they were searching for something. When the crowd looked at these direct disciples, they were very surprised. All of these direct disciples looked very disheveled. Their hair was disheveled and they seemed to be angry. Ba Su-yi, the one in front, is Gu Qinyu, 4th in the sword pagodas. Nan Lilan, 7th in the sword pagodas. Gong Qi and Sakura Asaka, 6th and 5th in the sword pagodas. Zhang Qing, Lu Ji and the others whispered to Su-yi, informing Su-yi of the identities of the direct disciples who walked out. Su-yi's gaze had long fallen on the personal disciples who had walked out. He had seen them from afar during the big hunt. Su-yi secretly sized them up. Gu Qinyu was ranked 4th in the sword pagoda, but he was only in his 20s. His slender figure was as straight as a pole, his eyebrows were as sharp as knives, and his eyes were flashing with a crimson color. Nan Lilan was tall and slender. He wore a light purple robe embroidered with green silk patterns. His eyes were bright, his eyebrows were slanted, and his face was handsome. Cool craftsman F Network forever reads 9 novels. What surprised Su-yi was the woman called Sakura Asaka. She was beautiful and ranked very high in the sword pagodas. Being 5th in the sword pagodas also represented her strength. Besides Sakura Asaka, there was a woman of similar age. Her phoenix-like eyes were shining with green brilliance. She was also very beautiful. She was Gong Qi, 6th in the sword pagodas. Su-yi vaguely remembered that Gong Qi's Yuan Qi seemed to have transformed into a cloud dragon colt. Her speed during the big hunt was astonishing. Whoosh, a young man in white jumped out of the space portal. His figure was tall and straight, and his black eyes were shining with dazzling light. As he walked out, the direct disciples beside him also made a path for him. The one in white is Yunlingfeng, 2nd in the sword pagodas and a disciple of the 15th sword peak. Chapter 510. The words 15th sword peak attracted Su-yi's attention. He looked at the young man in white, who was ranked 2nd in the sword pagoda. Such a ranking was enough to show his talent and strength. It was undeniable that when Su-yi's gaze landed on Yunlingfeng's body, he indeed felt that his temperament was not ordinary. Yunlingfeng's aura was somewhat restrained, making it difficult to detect. However, the vigorous fluctuations of his aura made it clear to Su-yi that this fellow was not someone to be trifled with. Suddenly, Su-yi felt that someone was staring at him. Following that invisible feeling, Su-yi looked over and his expression suddenly changed. Look at the tick. Cool N craftsman on Chapter R. The net Su-yi saw a familiar figure. Her black hair was tied into a ponytail at the back of her head. Her red lips were tender, and her eyes were as clear as water. Her figure was slender and graceful under her orange clothes. Who else could it be other than Mu Yao? Mu Yao walked out of the spatial teleportation gate. She possessed an otherworldly bearing, like a fairy descending from the heavens. She attracted quite a few gazes from the surroundings. However, her eyes immediately found Su-yi and stared at Su-yi. If looks could kill, Su-yi would have died countless times by now. Su-yi is over there. As expected, he has already come out. It's Su-yi and Situmuyang. They might have obtained all the benefits from the tribulation. After all, they were originally on that mountain. When a personal disciple saw Su-yi and Situmuyang, his voice spread out. In an instant, numerous gazes locked onto Su-yi and Situmuyang. Su-yi, Situmuyang, you've gone too far. Hand over our interspatial bags. Su-yi, hand over the mystical spirit fruit or we won't let you off. When they saw the figures of Su-yi and Situmuyang, those personal disciples who had been blacklisted by Su-yi and Situmuyang could no longer remain calm. They had a belly full of grievances and depression to begin with. Now, they suddenly exploded and began to feel indignant. There were even personal disciples who shouted that they wanted to obtain the mystical spiritual fruit. However, even though these personal disciples were shouting loudly, they knew how frightening Su-yi was. For some reason, they were somewhat fearful. Even Zhang Lingyun, who was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, had been defeated. No one dared to take the lead. However, two people walked out. Two beautiful women walked out together. Under the crowd's gaze, these two beautiful women directly walked in front of Su-yi and Situmuyang. Their eyes glowed and their auras filled the air. The two people who walked forward were Sakura Asaka and Gong Qi, who were ranked 5th in the Sword Pagoda. Looking at Su-yi and Situmuyang, Sakura Asaka spoke. Her eyes were bright and her voice was like the sound of nature. However, there was a hint of irrefutability in her voice. She said, "We only want 2 mystical spiritual fruits. As for the rest, it has nothing to do with us. Otherwise, don't say that we're bullying the weak." Looking at Ng Qianqian and Gong Qi, who had stepped forward, and hearing these words, the surrounding personal disciples fell silent for a moment. Even the group of stunned elders and protectors at the side did not move. They were all sizing up the situation. At this moment they did not know what was going on. However, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, and the others were very nervous at this moment. The two people in front of them were powerful existences ranked 5th and 6th in the Sword Pagoda. If it was in the past, they would not even have the chance to meet them. Looking at Sakura Asaka and Gong Qi, Situmuyang and Su-yi were also sizing them up curiously. It was undeniable that these two women were not simple. "I don't have the mystical spiritual fruit on me. You've got the wrong person." Su-yi shook his head. No matter what, he naturally could not admit that the mystical spiritual fruit was on him. "It seems that you've chosen to let me take it myself," Gong Qi said with a calm expression. However, the aura on her body was already surging. This was a warning and threat. She would not believe Su-yi's words. Otherwise, this guy would not have kept running away. Su-yi was not moved. He never liked being threatened, nor did he like being looked down upon in such an overbearing manner, even though she was a good-looking woman. Looking at Gong Qi, Su-yi's lips curled up. A smile appeared on his face as he said, "Do you like me and want to marry me? However, even if you marry me, I really don't have the mystical spiritual fruit to give you." Hearing Su-yi's words, everyone was dumbfounded. None of the disciples in the Xinjian gate dared to speak to Gong Qi in such a manner. This was not provocation, but flirting. Furthermore, it was flirting in public. Boom! In an instant, as soon as Su-yi finished speaking, an aura exploded and swept out in all directions, causing the ground of the square to crack. Green light was dazzling and fog filled the air. Waves of water emerged from the ground and intertwined with each other. In an instant they formed the shadow of a huge ferocious fish beast. It opened its ferocious mouth and bit towards Sui. This sudden turn of events stunned everyone, including Situmuyang and the rest. However, no one was surprised. Sui actually dared to flirt with Gongqi. Was he looking for a beating? At this moment, under everyone's astonished gazes, Sui seemed to have made preparations at the same time. His figure suddenly moved at a strange and fast speed. It was so fast that it surprised everyone. Swish, in a split second, Sui actually avoided the ferocious fish and rushed in front of Gongqi. With a shake of his right arm, a palm print directly slammed towards Gongqi's face. Humph! Gongqi was stunned and very surprised. However, in the next moment, she let out a soft snort from her throat. Green light surged and she directly wanted to resist with her palm. However, at this moment, Su Yi's mouth curved into a crazy smile. The right palm that he stretched out suddenly shrank, and then the soles of his feet and the ground created a series of afterimages. He turned 180 degrees at an incredible angle. As his left arm stretched out and shrank, he pulled Gongqi into his arms and squeezed hard. He said softly in Gongqi's ear, "Look, you said you didn't like me, but you took the initiative to throw yourself into my arms." Such a scene stunned everyone. Gongqi was hugged by Su-yi just like that. Sakura Asaka, who was not far away, was also stunned. This seemed to be completely out of her imagination. Gongqi was also stunned and a little sluggish. "Bastard, I'm going to kill you!" But it was only for a moment. Gongqi let out a shout and stomped her foot on the ground. The aura on her body surged out and a green light shone brightly. Her right hand, which contained a ferocious energy, spun around and directly struck Su-yi with her elbow. "Are you shy? Let's talk about it later." This fierce aura made Su-yi's expression change secretly. He did not show any trace, but he was already prepared. He immediately retreated, his feet touching the ground, and quickly jumped. "Bastard, I won't let you go!" Gongqi was furious. No one had ever treated her like this. He took liberties with her in public and even attacked her. She was careless and was completely unprepared. Chapter 511. After being taken advantage of in front of everyone, how could Gongqi let it go? She waved her hand and chased after him. Su-yi's expression changed slightly. Gongqi was definitely not someone to be trifled with. He was only able to take advantage of her because he was careless. Su-yi did not dare to be careless. He landed at a low altitude, touched the ground again, and retreated again. What a disgrace! "Stop it!" someone shouted. The person who spoke was an old man in his 70s. His hair was white, but his face was ruddy, and his voice was loud like a bell. As soon as the old man finished his sentence, the furious Gongqi came to a halt. She stomped her feet angrily and said to the old man, "Master, that lecher is shameless and perverted." How am I shameless and perverted? You were the one who attacked first. This is no longer the battlefield of 10,000 swords, and you're asking me for the mystical spiritual fruit? I don't have it. Even if I did, why should I give it to you? Su-yi also stopped and looked at Gongqi. His expression did not change. Finally, someone stepped forward to stop them. "We're already out of the battlefield of 10,000 swords. What are you doing? Do you still want to fight after leaving the battlefield of 10,000 swords? Moreover, the guardian elders are here. Do you have no respect for the sect rules?" Upon hearing Su-yi's words, the guardian elders originally wanted to take the opportunity to test Su-yi's background. At this moment, they could no longer pretend that they did not see anything. Many of the elders berated them. The personal disciples who were originally jeering also stopped talking. However, many of them glared at Su-yi, and many of them wanted to skin Su-yi alive. If it were not for Su-yi, they would not have been so miserable in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. Little lecher, bastard, Gong-chi was not willing to give up. She angrily stomped her feet, and her beautiful eyes were sharp as if she wanted to cut Su-yi into pieces. Don't mess around, the old man gave Gong-chi a look. Master! Gong-chi was furious. That little lecher actually hugged her, and it was her waist. Her anger could not be extinguished, but now there was no other way. She could only clench her teeth and suppress her anger. Her sharp eyes were like swords, staring at Su-yi from afar. Mu Yao stood in the crowd and glared at Su-yi. She didn't make any unnecessary movements and directly walked forward. She didn't show any respect to the group of elders. She walked past the group of elders and arrived in front of the deacon who was counting the sword vein stones. She took out a handful of sword vein stones and directly handed it to the deacon. She glared fiercely at Su-yi and left. The group of elders watched as Mu Yao swaggered off. The gazes on each of their faces were very complicated. Every elder seemed to have some kind of tacit understanding, as if they didn't see Mu Yao at all. Su-yi noticed all of this and was astonished. He felt that something was amiss. Disciples who came out of the battlefield of 10,000 swords, if you have sword vein stones, please come forward and count them. Disciples who don't have sword vein stones, please stand aside. Someone will come forward to register them. A deacon spoke. His voice was mixed with vitality and reverberated in the square. It was loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. Humph! Hearing this, many pro-disciples rolled their eyes at Su-yi and reluctantly went forward to count the sword vein stones. Master, please uphold justice for us. Su-yi and Situmuyang are too shameless. They sneaked up on us with a black brick and stole our space bags and sword vein stones. Master, please uphold justice for us. Our sword vein stones were also stolen by Su-yi and Situmuyang. Elder, please uphold justice for us. Elder, Su-yi has gone too far. He stole our space bags as soon as he entered the battlefield of 10,000 swords. He even controlled a group of barbaric beasts to deal with us. Elder, please uphold justice for us. Su-yi didn't act recklessly in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. He stole all of our space bags. Elder, please uphold justice for us. At the mention of sword vein stones, the pro-disciples who had been robbed by Su-yi couldn't hold it in anymore. They were all disciples of the various elders, and they immediately complained to their masters. Then, all the inner disciples joined in. They were even more miserable. They had only been in the battlefield of 10,000 swords for a few days, and they had been robbed clean by Su-yi. People continued to rush out of the space portal. When they heard the voices in the square, they thought that they were complaining about Su-yi and Situmuyang. The inner and outer disciples immediately joined in. In an instant, a shocking scene appeared in the square. A group of pro-disciples and inner disciples were crying and complaining about Su-yi and Situmuyang's crimes. They were like bullied children who saw their parent. The more they complained, the more aggrieved they felt. The entire square had become a venue for Su-yi and Situmuyang to be accused of all kinds of crimes. The elders and guardians in the square had already fixed their gazes on Su-yi and Situmuyang. They were stunned. There wasn't the most shocked expression on their faces. There was only more shock. They had robbed tens of thousands of inner disciples' space bags, sneak attacked, and many pro-disciples had been robbed. Zhang Lingyun, who was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda, was one of the victims. From the complaints of the disciples, the elders and guardians could tell that all the mystical spiritual fruits had indeed been taken by Su-yi and Situmuyang. In the end, tens of thousands of inner disciples and pro-disciples had besieged Su-yi, but he had still managed to escape. He had even encountered a heaven and earth spirit creature or a savage beast's tribulation. All the disciples of Xinjian Gate had almost been killed. How could the elders and guardians not be shocked? They couldn't figure out how Su-yi had done it. Yu Chongqing, Mei Huaye, Lu Baimei, and the others looked at Su-yi in astonishment. They couldn't help but reevaluate Su-yi. Of course, Situ Muyang's attention was no less than Su-yi's. Many elders looked at Situ Muyang and secretly twitched. They looked a little helpless. They didn't know how this little guy got together with Su-yi. Su-yi, are they telling the truth? Elder Yu Chongqing also started to frown as he asked Su-yi, wanting to ascertain the truth. No. Su-yi shook his head, pretending not to know. Su-yi, how dare you deny it? You're despicable. Seeing Su-yi's denial, the crowd became even angrier and more indignant. Su-yi didn't pay much attention to the indignant crowd. They were already out of the battlefield of 10,000 swords, so there was no need to worry. Situ Muyang also didn't take it to heart. He stood quietly beside Su-yi. On the other hand, the gazes of the elders and protectors twitched a little. Looking at the situation, it was likely that the accusations of so many people were not far from the truth. This matter is of great importance. Let the sect master make the decision. Take Su-yi and Situ Muyang away from Sky Sword Peak. The elderly elder with white hair at his temples had an extremely high status among this group of elders, and he spoke in such a manner. Chapter 512. Furthermore, this was the first time something like this had happened in the Myriad Sword battlefield, and it was related to Situ Muyang. All the elders knew that they couldn't handle this matter. Let's go then. Don't be afraid. Situ Muyang whispered in Su-yi's ears. He wasn't worried at all. After all, the Sky Sword Peak was his territory. Su-yi smiled, but he had some concerns in his heart. After all, the Myriad Sword battlefield had plundered a little too much. Subsequently, Su-yi, Situ Muyang, Zhang Lingyun, the siblings Pu Hao and Pu Qingqing, as well as other personal disciples and inner disciple representatives, were escorted to the Sky Sword Peak by a group of elders and several guardians. We're in big trouble now. Will Boss Su-yi be alright? Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, and the rest were worried. It seemed like the matter was serious. Being brought to the Sky Sword Peak was no ordinary matter. This is big. Those are direct disciples and inner sect disciples. Tan Chao was also worried. Situ Muyang is the young sect master. He should be fine with Boss Su-yi. Wang Fan said. They knew of Situ Muyang's identity. Situ Muyang is the young sect master, but Boss Su-yi isn't. What if he is taken advantage of? Lu Ji said. Situ Muyang was the young sect master. Naturally, there was no need to worry. Even if he went to the Sky Sword Peak, he would not be at a disadvantage. I'll ask my master. Zhang Qing turned and ran to Ho Changming. After all, his master was a protector. Su Jiahui, Lu Ji, and the rest went up together. With their current status as outer sect disciples, they had no choice. This matter can be big or small. The key is how it is handled. Ho Changming said. As a protector, he didn't have much authority to speak on the Sky Sword Peak. I'm going back to the 36th Sword Peak. I hope that Elder Su has returned. Su Jiahui's eyes were full of worry. At this moment, her last hope could only be placed on Elder Su. She hoped that Elder Su had returned to Xinjian Gate. The Heavenly Sword Peak stood majestically in the middle of the mountains. It was as if a dragon was holding its head up high. Its aura was extraordinary, and it was surrounded by mountains and valleys. Su-yi was brought by the elder, and they landed on the square of the Sky Sword Peak as though they were riding on clouds. The thick bluestone was mottled, and the stone tortoise and camel sword pierced the sea of clouds. The palace was magnificent, and the stone pillars were engraved with several ancient beast-shaped patterns. The elders and protectors immediately brought Su-yi and the other disciples to the Sky Sword Peak. Some disciples needed to report to the sect master, and let the elders and protectors wait in the main hall. Su-yi followed the elders and walked into the palace. It was his second time here, and he was familiar with it. The main hall was embossed with rare beasts and sword patterns. They were vivid and lifelike. The floor was paved with green jade. The carved beams and painted rafters were mottled, and the atmosphere was solemn. On both sides of the main hall, the chairs were lined up neatly. The elders sat in order, and the atmosphere was solemn. The few accompanying elders could only stand behind the elders. As for Su-yi and the others, they could only stand in the hall. It was his second time here, and Su-yi was familiar with it. Humph! A series of humph could be faintly heard. Many angry gazes were fixed on Su-yi. Su-yi glanced at Zhang Lingyun, Pu Hao, and Pu Qingqing. They didn't seem to be too happy. Don't mind them. They're just losers, Situ Muyang said softly in Su-yi's ear. He didn't care much about Zhang Lingyun, Pu Hao, Pu Qingqing, and the other disciples. They were just losers. Su-yi nodded and didn't take it to heart. Anyway, Situ Muyang was his scapegoat. The most important thing was whether Situ Muyang, Zhang Qing, and the others were reliable. As long as the mysterious space wasn't exposed, it didn't matter even if he was expelled from the Shunjian Gate. After all, he didn't belong to any sect at the beginning. The gazes of the elders and protectors also fell on Su-yi and Situ Muyang. Not to mention how Situ Muyang and Su-yi were able to escape from the encirclement of all the personal disciples and inner disciples. Su-yi and Situ Muyang defeated Zhang Lingyun, who ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda. Even if they defeated her together, it was enough to shock all the elders and protectors. Initial B4 on the 36th Sword Peak. Elder Su, Su Jiahui, Zhang Qing, Lu Ji, and the other disciples all ran all the way up the mountain, panting. They went straight to Elder Su's residence on the mountain. Su Jiahui was the first to arrive at the 36th Sword Peak. Looking at the quiet residence of Elder Su, she panted and looked dignified. Elder Su hasn't come back yet. Su Jiahui frowned. If Elder Su hadn't come back yet, she really didn't know what to do. When did you become so careless? Are you the only one who came out of the battlefield of 10,000 swords? Did the others die in there? A faint voice was heard. A short figure appeared outside the courtyard silently and stretched his back. His face was slightly old, and he was as thin as a child of 8 or 9 years old. His black hair was mixed with white hair, and he seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. It was Elder Su. However, before Elder Su finished stretching, he suddenly felt something. His eyes fell on Su Jiahui. Then, a light flashed in his eyes and he looked a little surprised. Elder Su, you're back. That's great. When she saw Elder Su, Su Jiahui's furrowed brows immediately relaxed and a smile appeared on her face. She immediately said, Elder Su, quickly make a trip to the Sky Sword Peak. Something big has happened. Zhang Lingyun, did you really lose to Su-yi and Situ Muyang? Weren't you ambushed by them? In the great hall of the Sky Sword Peak, the sect leader had yet to arrive. Under the complicated and shocked gazes of the elders, Elder Yu Chongqing asked Zhang Lingyun. He wanted to ascertain if Zhang Lingyun was truly defeated in a head-on confrontation. If not, this would be too unbelievable. Zhang Lingyun's face was pale. Being questioned by Elder Yu Chongqing, his expression couldn't help but twitch. This was equivalent to rubbing salt on his wound. That's right. Zhang Lingyun secretly gritted his teeth and nodded. At this moment, he also wished that he was defeated by a sneak attack and not by a direct confrontation. After hearing Zhang Lingyun's words, all the elders and protectors present couldn't help but tremble. Su-yi and Situ Muyang were younger than each other. Zhang Lingyun was ranked 9th in the Sword Pagoda. All the elders and protectors were aware of his talent and strength. However, he was defeated by Su-yi and Situ Muyang. Chapter 513. An elder spoke. He was Zhang Lingyun's master. At this moment, he could not sit still. His personal disciple, whom he was so proud of, had suffered such a big setback. Moreover, he was defeated by two little guys, Su-yi and Situ-muyang. This made him lose face. #latest chapter Ta Festival, smiley face. Zhang Lingyun was very aggrieved. He could not help but roll his eyes at Su-yi and Situ-muyang, who were standing not far away. He also wished that he had been seriously injured before he was defeated. However, only he knew that he was at his peak and was well prepared. In the end, he was trampled. Humph, do I need him to be seriously injured to defeat me? Even if I'm alone, he can't take advantage of me. Situ-muyang could not stand it anymore. It was just Zhang Lingyun. Could it be that these elders did not put him and Su-yi in their eyes? The corner of Zhang Lingyun's eyes twitched, but she did not say anything. She knew that Situ-muyang was telling the truth. Even if she was facing Situ-muyang alone, she would not be able to gain the upper hand. She did not know where this brat came from. He was so young, but his strength was so terrifying. Looking at Zhang Lingyun's and Situ-muyang's attitudes, how could the elders not know the truth in their hearts? Their eyes were secretly surging with waves of emotions. Someone is coming. It should be the gate master. Outside the hall, the elders in the hall felt the fluctuation of aura. They immediately stood up. It should be the gate master. The fluctuation of aura, a figure quietly appeared in the hall. The figure was thin and small. His face was slightly weathered. His black hair was inlaid with silver, and his eyes were bright. Elder Su, when they saw the figure, all the elders and protectors were stunned. It was Elder Su. Su-yi was surprised. The person in front of him was his benefactor, Xinjian Gate's Elder Suruga. Greetings, Su-yi stepped forward and bowed. Elder Su finally returned to Xinjian Gate. Don't worry, no one will be able to bully you at my 36th sword peak. Elder Su turned around and interrupted Su-yi's words. His eyes were fixed on Su-yi, and there was a glimmer in his eyes. Greetings, Elder Su. Greetings, Elder Su. In the main hall, the various elders had different expressions on their faces as they bowed. I heard that you brought people from the 36th Sword Peak to the Sky Sword Peak. I came over to take a look. Elder Su's gaze moved away from Su-yi and swept across the dozens of elders in the hall. He spoke indifferently, but the expression on his face was uncertain, and his gaze was completely sidelong. Elder Su, you're being too serious. Su-yi was a little reckless in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. He stole the space bags of his fellow disciples and ambushed them. That's why we brought him here for the sect master to decide. Elder Su Bai Mingshan spoke. His eyes flickered as he asked Elder Su, I heard that Su-yi is your new disciple. Is that true? It's none of your business whether he's my disciple or not. I'm taking in a disciple. Who are you to interfere? Elder Su stared directly at Bai Mingshan and released his aura, which immediately enveloped Elder Bai Mingshan. That aura was so strong that it seemed like it was going to overturn the hall. Elder Su's voice was cold as he said, I heard that a disciple from the 15th Sword Peak ran to the 36th Sword Peak and behaved atrociously. The disciple didn't know any better, but did you live for nothing? You don't know any better, or is it that you, Bai Mingshan, don't put me, Suruga, in your eyes? I'll only warn you this once. If you don't know any better next time, I'll slap you. His voice was deafening and impolite. This was Elder Su's attitude. The entire hall was as silent as cicadas in winter. Everyone was intimidated by this aura. Zhang Lingyun, Pu Hao, and the other personal disciples and inner disciples trembled for no reason. This aura was too strong. Even if it wasn't targeted at them, it felt like it was going to shatter their bodies. Su-yi was dumbfounded. He was completely stunned. Elder Su was too domineering. He directly told an elder of Xinjian Gate that he was going to slap him. Elder Bai Mingshan's face was green and red, but he didn't dare to breathe loudly. He Mu Yang greets Great Grandmaster. Is Great Grandmaster here? Situ Mu Yang, on the other hand, was not intimidated. Instead, it was as if he had seen his family. With a smile on his face, he rushed forward directly. He was already a head taller than Elder Su. Kid, how did you grow up? It's good that you're back. Did you go to the battlefield of 10,000 swords too? Looking at Situ Mu Yang, Elder Su's expression immediately softened. He reached out and patted Situ Mu Yang's face. There was a touch of affection in his eyes. Then he seemed to sense Situ Mu Yang's aura. Surprise flashed through his eyes and he said, "Not bad, not bad." Great Grandmaster, Su Yi was still in a daze. Elder Su was Situ Mu Yang's Great Grandmaster. His seniority didn't seem to be ordinary. No wonder these elders treated Elder Su so differently. I'm back. I've gained a lot in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. Situ Mu Yang chuckled. Yeah. Elder Su nodded. He didn't pay attention to Elder Bai Mingshan. He asked Su Yi and Situ Mu Yang, who were stunned, "Did you two kill any disciples of Xinjian Gate in the battlefield of 10,000 swords?" No, definitely not. Situ Mu Yang shook his head. He had never killed anyone. After all, they were all disciples of Xinjian Gate. No. Su Yi also nodded. He had never killed any disciples of Xinjian Gate. Okay, then come back with me. Elder Su nodded and gestured for Su Yi to leave with him. Elder Su, this Su Yi took all the mystical spiritual fruits in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. He didn't leave a single one for anyone else. Seeing that Elder Su was about to take Su Yi away, an elder gritted his teeth and said, "The mystical spiritual fruits were extremely important to this batch of disciples." Yeah, Elder Su. This Su Yi was indeed a little too bold in the battlefield of 10,000 swords. He plundered the spatial bags of tens of thousands of inner disciples, as well as the spatial bags and sword-patterned stones of many direct disciples. This caused chaos in the battlefield of 10,000 swords and seriously disrupted the order of the Myriad Sword Conference. "Let's wait for the sect master to make a decision," an elder said in a low voice. He didn't dare to speak too loudly. Elder Su's eyes were cold as he swept his gaze across the Xinjian Gate elders. He then shouted, "Did you Xinjian Gate elders grow up eating **T? The battlefield of 10,000 swords is a training ground. Your disciples are no match for them, so you old folks have to come out and protect them. Do you think the people of my 36th Sword Peak are easy to bully? Come, tell me, which rule of the Xinjian Gate did Su Yi and Situ Mu Yang violate? If you can't tell me today, I won't be polite. My 36th Sword Peak is not easy to bully." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.